Ladies and gents, boys and girls, what is going on Wednesday, July the 26th, 2023? Hope you are all doing well. Chris Phillips here, your host of the Daily Crow, the Spurs Up Show. I see GA, Jonathan Lee, John Edward, Travi, Ethan, Xavier M. What is up? Also, those in the Big Cock Club Discord, head over to the TDC Questions channel. The TDC Questions channel, be sure your questions are answered there. Guys, we got a packed show, a lot to get into. Yes, Brendan, you asked the question. We are switching up Jake Crane. We're doing some shuffling this week. So the reason being, our friend Mark Ryan is at ACC Media Days this week. He is busy tomorrow and cannot come on the show at his normally scheduled Thursday time. Needed to move to Friday, so I did some shuffling. We're going to go Jake Crane today. We're going to go Bryce Kuhn of 24/7 Sports tomorrow. And then we're going to go Mark Ryan of the Fan Upstate on Friday. And Chase Youngblood, yes, you pointed out, I do apologize. I will be changing the name of the YouTube video. As we go throughout the show, I realize I messed that up. So that is my bad. Either way, guys, we are jam-packed with content. Q&A Power Hour in our third hour. Jake Crane in our second hour. We're talking all things quarterbacks in this first hour, and our 2023 opponent preview series continues as we talk the Texas A&M Aggies with my good friend Andrew Stefaniak of Locked On Aggies podcast. So guys, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into that because, like I said, we got tons to get into today, and we got a limited amount of time. So without further ado, we're talking all things the Gamecocks Week 9 opponent in Texas A&M with Andrew Stefaniak of Locked On Aggies. Enjoy this conversation. We'll be right back. As our 2023 opponent preview series continues, we go to College Station to talk the Texas A&M Aggies, and who better than Andrew? Andrew, help me pronounce your last name, by the way. I should have asked you that off air.
No, you're good. It's Stefaniak, yes.
It is Stefaniak. Hey, we're 1 for 1. We're already on a roll. Andrew Stefaniak of Locked On Aggies podcast. He joins the show today to talk all things Texas A&M. Andrew, what's going on, my friend? Appreciate you taking the time. And how was SEC Media Days? We were talking off air. Obviously, you were there. Got to listen to Jimbo. I did as well. How was the week for you, and how you doing today?
It was a good time. I love being up there. Last year was my first media days up in Atlanta, and then this year in Nashville. I'm a big fan of Nashville, Tennessee. It was a great time. Got lots of good content. I know you did as well. It was a fun time, and I'm doing dang good today. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, man. I appreciate you asking. It's always fun to talk college football. Before we look at this 2023 Aggies team, let's look back at what happened last year. 5-7. 2-6 in SEC play. And just to give some context on that season and just how abysmal it was the first 6-game losing streak since 1972. First SEC team eliminated from bowl season last year. The highest preseason rank to finish with a losing record since 2010. That was the Texas Longhorns, ironically enough. And then finally, the first ever program to follow a number 1 recruiting class with a losing record. Andrew, I simply ask this. What didn't go wrong last year for A&M? Because I was about to ask what went wrong, but it felt like everything that could go wrong did go wrong for Jimbo Fisher's squad.
It was a rough year. I mean, everybody in Aggie land knows it was. I mean, 5-7 with that roster, that can't happen. At the end of the day, and even when we get into this year, I mean, Texas A&M this year, last year, you've had top 10 recruiting classes pretty much every year these last 4 or 5 recruiting cycles. 2023 was your first cycle outside of the top 10. So it's the last season, you hate to talk about the injury bug. The injury bug hits you. You have quarterbacks mixing in and out. You lose a bunch. O-linemen go down. Receivers go down. And it felt like the offense was just horrendous. The defense, points per game wise, was one of the best in the country. The Aggies really struggled against the run, especially in SEC play, but they did, like I said, points per game was solid. The only issue they had on defense was stopping opposing running games. So the offense, Jimbo Fisher's offense, truly was the issue last year for the Aggies. And they just couldn't move the ball. Now, you can credit part of it to the Max Johnson and then King, and then you got Connor Wigman. I mean, you got all these guys floating in and out. You can credit it to that, but quite frankly, I credit it to the fact that I don't think Coach Fisher's offense is what it used to be. And I'm sure what we're going to get into here in a minute, I think he made a step to fix that.
Now, you speak on Jimbo Fisher, obviously, Andrew, coming into his 6th year. What is the vibe in Aggie land around their head coach? Because this is a guy, he's one of the few active coaches that has won a national championship. You know, you think about all the promises he made early in his tenure. And I mean, we all know about the huge buyout. And, you know, listening to him at SEC Media Days, he's obviously confident they can turn it around. But when it comes to the vibe and the mood in Aggie land around their head coach, is it a make or break year from Jimbo? Are people disgruntled? Are they hopeful? Are they optimistic? Like, what's the overall feeling from Texas A&M fans?
I think it's optimism, but it's like a gas tank, and you're sitting on a quarter tank right now. I don't. It's people are optimistic about this season just based off the fact that if you look at blue chip ratio, I'm a big believer in the blue chip ratio. Texas A&M has a top 5 roster in college football. For those that are fans of the blue chip ratio, this year things should click. One of the big misconceptions I believe about this Texas A&M team is that the 2022 class, the historic class, that everybody's gone. That, yes, you lost a couple of guys, but you still, of that class, have a big bulk of those 5 stars, of those high 4 stars. Most of those guys are still around, and most of those guys you're going to see on the field this season if you didn't see them last year. And so I think people are optimistic for this year. If Coach Fisher does anything similar to what happened last year, I think optimism is going to run out quick. One thing Aggie fans are hopeful for is the 2024 schedule is pretty dang easy comparative to a lot of, I mean, it's an SEC schedule. It's not a cakewalk, but comparative to what some other folks got, it's manageable. So I think it's half and half. Like for me, I'm optimistic in the fact that let's have a few things click. Let's see some second year jumps from the 2022 players. And then let's have 2024 be a year where you make a push for a college football playoff. I think that's kind of the vibe in College Station right now.
Now, Andrew, as we talk this year's Aggies team, let's start with the offensive side of the football. You mentioned the splash hire, I think, of the offseason in terms of coordinators. Bobby Petrino added on as the OC. Connor Wegman returns with high hopes as QB1. He is going to be the guy. Was really, really good in limited action a season ago. He's got some great weapons to throw to. Anaya Smith, Evan Stewart, Moose Muhammad III. They're lethal weapons on the outside. I think a big question, obviously, for you guys in the running game, who replaces Devin Achane? But 4 of 5 of the big uglies on the offensive line return with more experience behind them. So when you look at this Texas A&M offense, like you mentioned, that was the Achilles heel last year. With the addition of Bobby Petrino, number one, do you think Jimbo Fisher is really going to get out of the way and let Bobby call the plays? And if he does, what does this Aggies offense look like in 2023? And what do you think the ceiling could be? Because I look at that roster, like you mentioned, there's a lot of pieces to play with on that offensive side of the ball.
You know, it's funny. You bring it up. I think it is a top 3 talking point in college football right now. What will Coach Fisher do in regards to
Andrew, not to cut you off, he didn't give us a lot of clarity, I felt like, at SEC Media Days when he was asked about it and kind of said, well, you know, Bobby's a good coach, and that's why we brought him on, and we're going to figure it out. Like, it's like all you had to say was he's going to call plays. That just end it. And instead, he created this confusion even further, which maybe it's gamesmanship, maybe it's not. Who knows?
That's what he was making it seem like, and that's a great point. He was making it seem like it was some kind of strategic advantage. And I'm like, come on, just tell us the deal. I have a little bit of information on that I actually got last night. Connor Wigman went on a TV program, and he kind of dropped the bag, I think, a little bit, and let the cat out of the bag, and kind of basically said, Coach Petrino is the guy. He's been running the offense. Coach Fisher obviously will come in and give opinions, but Coach Petrino, off-season wise so far through the spring, has really been the guy. At media days, so obviously leaving media days, I was like, what's going to happen? Is Coach Fisher? I don't know. Hearing that from Wigman makes me feel a little more confident in the fact that Coach Fisher really might let it go. And I've joked, I think it's a win or 2 difference in all reality. I think if this could blow up, if they're Rams batting heads all day, I think if Coach Fisher lets it go and lets Coach Petrino do his thing, I think it truly is a win, potentially 2-win difference from if Coach Fisher was calling plays. So that's my thoughts there. I do think Petrino ends up getting the gig as the offensive play caller. And I think it's going to be successful. I mean, he's a historic college football mind. You throw away the past, I know, all that stuff, but when it comes to the football field, he is a historic offensive play caller. He's had some incredible offenses during his time coaching college football. And then speaking to the offense as a whole, I mean, a lot of people I think forget that Connor Wigman was part of that 2022 class and is a former 5-star recruit. A guy that in limited action last year, he appeared in 5 games. I mean, he stood out and played well. I mean, there was obviously some things, there were some mistakes you don't love, but all in all, it was pretty impressive what he went out and did. Then you bring back 2 veterans in Moose Muhammad III and Aniyah Smith. Evan Stewart's in his second year. I think he could be a chance. He has a chance to finish as a top 10 receiver in college football when it's all said and done. The running back room is an interesting one. You got 3 guys that are going to kind of bounce. It's Amari Daniels, Le'Veon Moss, and then 5-star freshman Reuben Owens. Petrino historically likes to kind of spread the ball around to his running backs. He's not like A-Chain got like 92% of the carries last year. They ran him into the ground. You're not going to see that this year. I think all those names I listed, you're going to see the ball kind of spread around to equally. But I think the 5-star freshman Reuben Owens is going to take over as kind of the guy when it's all said and done. And then you also have some a really talented tight end in Donovan Green. And then the offensive line, Bryce Foster is going to be one of the best centers in college football. It's a talented group up there. Like you said, the Big Uglies. I haven't heard that term in a while. I love it. But it's a talented group if they stay healthy, and I think that's the biggest question mark for them.
Now, Andrew, moving to the defensive side of the football, you mentioned that they could not stop the run. Ranked 123rd in rush defense a season ago. You get talented bodies back up front. Fadil Diggs, McKinley Jackson, Shamar Turner, they lead that group in the front 4. Chris Russell Jr. and Edrin Cooper lead the way at linebacker. Tyreek Chappell, Damani Richardson, and Jordan Gilbert return in the secondary. You also add Tony Grimes from North Carolina out of the transfer portal. That was a really, really big pickup. But like you mentioned, defense just struggled to stop the run a season ago. Are there encouraging signs they make massive improvements there? And your overall just expectations and thoughts on what this Aggies defense will look like this season?
So speaking to stopping the run, it's one of those things that, frankly, I'm going to have to see it. Last year, you had the bodies, you had the guys, you had the talent and the stars when it comes to like how good these guys were at high school. This defensive front is all talented players, and they couldn't stop the run. The linebackers made bad decisions. They chose the wrong gap. They didn't have good gap discipline. It was all in all, it was not sound football that led to struggling to stop the run. Frankly, and it's going to sound like I'm beating a drum here, but I chop a lot of this back to talent, folks. And you might say, like, well, you might think it's a bad argument, but I don't think talent is a bad argument. And so what my point about stopping the run is you have the talent to do it. It's just going to come down to coaching. And ironically, I think that's the big question mark right now at Texas A&M is how did we learn to stop the run? There was the tragic passing of Coach Price, the Aggies defensive line coach. I hate to see that. Coach Price was a great football person, a former Aggie player, and that hurts. Losing your coach. This happened about a month ago. It hurts losing your defensive line coach. It's not going to help you stop the run. But I do think just the defensive line was young. I think that they're going to develop and be able to stop the run this season. But like I said, I think you're going to have to see it happen. Secondary wise, like you said, Tony Grimes, former 5-star recruit, big time player at North Carolina. He was good, but I don't think he lived up to the 5-star hype. I think he kind of might do that this year in College Station. And then Tyreek Chappell, solid corner. Damani Richardson, one of the better safeties in college football. Jordan Gilbert, and then you got Bryce Anderson, who's going to fill in at your nickel. And then you got a lot of guys like Sam McCall, transfers in from Florida State. He was in the mid-40s in the 2022 recruiting class, comes over to Texas A&M after one season in playing for Florida State. It's a defense that's going to be solid. The linebacker room is the one room I'm concerned about, and that is simply due to depth. Your couple guys up front are going to be good. Your starters at the linebacker position, but depth is a question mark there. When it comes to your D-line and your secondary, you have enough. I mean, you can run a platoon like Kentucky basketball. I mean, you can run a platoon with how many defensive linemen you have. You have 14 guys that could come in and start, truly. So I think that you're going to see a lot of these defensive linemen and a lot of these defensive backs are going to, I think it's going to be one of the better units in college football at both of those spots. So the only question mark for me is the linebackers and will the talent transfer to run stopping? And that's just still to be seen.
And Andrew, just to further emphasize your point, I'm looking at the stats here. I mean, Texas A&M was number 1 in the country in passing yards per game allowed, 4th in the country in yards per attempt allowed. On the rushing defense side, they were 123rd in yards per game allowed and 110th in yards per carry. I mean, but really, you look at the numbers, 25th in college football in points per game. I mean, it really was just the rush defense that gave them so much trouble a season ago. Let's move to special teams, Andrew. Nick Costanantu, is that how you say the last name?
That's one of those.
Nick C.
Yes, that's how you say it. We're gonna go with it. How about that?
Nick C. 2-time All SEC punter returns. That's all you need to know about him. Randy Bond returns as your kicker. Anaya Smith is back, healthy, looks to be lethal in the return game. Just talk about Aggie special teams. Does anything jump out to you going into this season for Texas A&M in the special teams department?
Well, we're not going to sit here and roll up into kicking for half an hour, but I'll give you a little tidbit about the
I have to bring it up because I'm a South Carolina guy, and it's Beamer ball, man. Hey, special teams to us is just like offense, defense. So it's funny how many people, though, will kind of like chuckle when I bring up special teams, but it's like, dude, I'm so used to talking about it with South Carolina. Yeah. It's so important. Like, hey, wins and loses ball games. Hey, it made a big difference in the South Carolina game last year.
Yes, it did. You got the South Carolina brought the opening kickoff back.
Kickoff touchdown, yes, from Xavier Legette. Yep.
And but speaking to Nick, our punter, as much as I joke about special teams, it is a big deal in football. I mean, we can sit here and all joke about it, but at the end of the day, having a guy who can pin the opponent within the 10-yard line, it's a big deal. If you have a punter that can, cough and corner the ball and stick him at the 3-yard line more times than not, that wins football games. Little things like that win football games. Touchbacks don't win football games. I mean, it's a difference if you can stick them inside the 10. It's a difference of 10 to 15 yards if you end up, getting a touchback. So I think it's a big deal, and the Aggies have one of the best punters in the SEC, potentially the country, and you're going to see him punting on Sundays. I feel pretty confident to say that. I'm speaking to Anaya Smith returning kicks. He is incredibly lethal. He's shifty, fast. He can do it all. And I think losing him last year, I mean, I hate keep making injury excuses because at the end of the day, everybody goes to injuries, but losing him was a big deal. I think having him healthy in the receiving game and the return game is going to help this Texas A&M football team out a lot. So I do think, wow, I'm joking around, but I do think the special teams it's something that Texas A&M is going to succeed in this year and be solid at, which is a good thing going into the season to know. I mean, you don't want a kicker missing field goals and a punter shanking kicks out of bounds like my 4-iron. I mean, you just don't want that. So, I think the special team is going to be solid for the Aggies this season.
Special teams isn't all that big of a deal until they lose you a couple ball games. Then it becomes a really big talking point. So to your point, it's great when it's a strength. So you look at this Aggies football team, Andrew, 15 starters are back, 7 on offense, 8 on defense. We've all heard they've got some of the most returning experience in college football. You mentioned all these great recruiting classes. To give people just some perspective, since 2019, the Aggies have finished 4th, 6th, 7th, 1st, and 15th in recruiting. 5-year trend of 5th being the average. So like you mentioned, that blue chip ratio, there's talent all over this roster, and it's back in 2023. And what feels like a make or break year for Jimbo Fisher in College Station. And you take a look at the 2023 schedule. You open up with New Mexico, week 2 at Miami. Really interesting game there. You come back home, UL Monroe. You have Auburn, Arkansas in Dallas, Alabama at Tennessee. Then you get your bye week. South Carolina, of course, at home. You get off the bye week, which we'll talk more about that game in just a second. Then at Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Abilene Christian, and at LSU to close out the season. So, Andrew, I'll ask you this. Is it a make or break year for Jimbo Fisher? And how do you feel like the 2023 schedule sets up for the Aggies to have a big bounce back season this year?
So taking positives, the place I take positives is you're not a school. So like I always joke, the standard of who the team I feel bad for as an Aggie is Auburn. I mean, they play Georgia and Alabama every year. So as an Aggie and as an Aggie fan, you got to look at it and you go, okay, we got to play Alabama. We get them at our place. So the schedule's tough, but I'm saying the reason I bring up the Auburn example is just because it could be worse. And I think you look at this schedule, you got to go to Knoxville, you got to go to Baton Rouge. I don't love either of those matchups. You get Alabama coming to your place, and I think an Alabama team that is more beatable now than ever. It's still a team full of talent, like I've been making the argument for the Aggies. It's a Crimson Tide team full of talent, but full of question marks as well. So it's a team that I think they're more beatable now than ever. The Ole Miss game, those are the four games that are pivotal. The at Tennessee, at LSU, Ole Miss, at Ole Miss, and then Bam at home. I think if you find a way to win one of those two games, I think 9 wins is in play. If you find a way to win 2, I think 9 wins is really in play, because then that gives you wiggle room to drop a game to a Auburn or a South Carolina or a Miami, a game that you probably are favored points wise to win, but you don't. You're gonna drop a game like that every once in a while. So that gives you wiggle room to do that and still finish the year with 9 wins if you're able to knock off some of those teams that you probably shouldn't beat on the road, except for the Alabama game, which is in Kyle Field.
Andrew, you talk about that getting to 9 wins. I mean, what is the win total that Texas A&M needs to reach to, reinstill faith or maybe just make people feel good about the direction of the program under Jimbo? Because like you mentioned, again, you look at the roster, you look at the recruiting, you look at the schedule. I mean, it feels like if they win less than 8 games, Jimbo Fisher, he seriously needs to be on the hot seat. I know the buyout's like 70-something million, but the price of oil's going up on Thanksgiving. I think he might be finding his way out. So, I mean, what is that win total they need to hit this year to say, okay, this thing is going in the right direction?
I think it's 9. I really do. And I going into a season and saying 9 wins, you need it. For people might laugh and say, well, it's Texas A&M. They've been struggled. They've been on the struggle bus. They're not going to win 9 games. And like I said, it's a drama and I'm beating it, but you have the roster that you should win 9 games. Frankly, with this roster, you should be in the boat, a similar boat to Georgia and Bama. Now don't, let's not, folks listening, don't stretch that. What I mean is, like, Georgia and Bama every year, their preseason win total is 11. Are they going to go undefeated, or are they going to, drop a game or two? Texas A&M roster wise is a team that should be at like a 10 over under if you're on the season when it comes to like betting on how many games the Aggies are going to win. And they're currently sitting at 8.5. And I think that speaks more to the coaching staff than it truly does the team as a whole. And I think that you need to win 9 ball games this year. Now, listen, you win 8, Coach Fisher, I don't think is going to be on the hot seat. You win 7, it's starting to warm up. I've said that I think if he wins 7 plus, that he's safe. And Aggie fans are not going to be happy with 7 wins, but I don't think they're going to pay that buyout, $75 million for 7 wins, and especially if you go then and win a bowl game. 6 wins, I think you could really, I wouldn't be surprised. Let's just put it that way.
Wild to think $75 million would be the buyout if they don't get it done under Jimbo this season. Let's talk a little bit, Andrew, about that South Carolina game, which, looks to be end of October, a pivotal swing game for the Aggies, and I'd say for South Carolina. But the streak ended a season ago, granted against one of the worst Aggie teams we've seen in recent memory, but it ended either way. Andrew, this was a game that I came into every single year, and as the streak grew, I said to myself, I'm chalking this up as an automatic loss until I see otherwise. Like, there's no reason to believe South Carolina can get it done. Well, now they have. The unfortunate part is they've got to travel to Kyle Field and take on Texas A&M this season. The Aggies, again, will be fresh off of a bye week. I'm sure this is one that A&M expects to win, but it does appear to be a critical swing game at the end of October. And I would call this one, Andrew, I mean, I'm sure there's bigger fish to fry, but I think if they're going to get to that 9-win mark, to your point, I think this is one they have to have.
I agree. And, first of all, speaking to South Carolina, first of all, folks, I love Columbia. one of my favorite cities to drive through when I'm heading down to the beach and stuff. I love staying in Columbia, and I'm a big believer in what Coach Beamer's doing. I really am. Like, I think South Carolina is going to be a team that you're really fearing going to play there, coming to play you. I just don't know if it's this year. And I've been talking about South Carolina a lot lately on my show, and talking up how I think this is going to work. I just don't know if it's going to be this year. And so I think that it's a pivotal game for the Aggies on the schedule. I think you have to, I agree with you. And that's what I was talking about. You lose a game to South Carolina, that's one more game you have to beat Ole Miss, Tennessee, or Ole Miss, Tennessee, Bama, or LSU to potentially get to that 9-win total. So it's a game to get to that number. Like you said, I think you have to beat South Carolina. And I don't think it's by any means going to be a cakewalk. I think this is going to be a solid team, a veteran quarterback. I know that there are some question marks just hearing people at media days talking about the Gamecocks, but it's going to be a solid football team. And veteran quarterback leadership is a big thing for me personally when evaluating a football team. And South Carolina has that in Spencer Rattler. So it's a game that, yes, definitely I have some concerns for, but and I think it's pivotal for the Aggies to put up a 9-win season.
Andrew, how familiar are you with the Bonham Trophy? I'm sure you know this is a trophy game, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course, yes.
Yeah. It's one of those trophies, though, that I feel like every single year I'll bring it up, and so many people are like, I had no idea that there was a trophy associated with this football game. Just thoughts on, I'll just say, the matchup with South Carolina in the sense of, how do you feel like Aggie fans view this game? Because it's a newer type of ball game, right? They just started playing this thing back in 2014. How do you feel like, I mean, I'm sure Aggie fans for a while looked at it as automatic W. We've won 7 in a row, whatever. Do you feel like there are some different feelings going into this one this year, maybe?
Just based off of hearing others' thoughts on the game, I think they're somewhat similar to mine. I mean, folks, I expect Texas A&M to win this football game. I do. I think they're going to be. If it was in Columbia, I wouldn't be as confident. Playing at home, I mean, Texas A&M Kyle Field has a top 10 average attendance in college football. It's not an easy place to go play, and so I think it's a game that I think Texas A&M fans have gained a lot of respect for South Carolina, Coach Beamer, and what he's doing. And I don't think that just is Texas A&M fans. I think that is the college football community as a whole. But I think that it's 1 year away. I mean, South Carolina, correct me if I'm wrong, aren't they doing pretty well in 2024 recruiting wise right now?
Doing pretty well. They've hit a slight lull over the last month and a half or so, but yes, it is trending. If they land a couple of the guys they've got targeted to be, I'd say, a top 15 class. So they're doing, yes, there's a lot of momentum on the recruiting trail, to your point.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, I think that it's close for South Carolina. I think that it's going to be a team that you don't write down as a W on a schedule. And it might be this year. I could be wrong, and it could be this year that they kind of break out onto the scene. I mean, of course, South Carolina finishes the year last year with wins over Tennessee and Clemson, correct?
Back-to-back top 10 victories, yeah.
And so, it's a team coming in with momentum. And I think that can be a good thing. Winning 2 late ball games over top 10 teams. I did not know that Clemson was top 10 at that point. I knew obviously Tennessee was, but that's a big deal for a program and for a coach, to where I wouldn't be one bit surprised if Spencer Rattler came out and had a Heisman campaign and led the Gamecocks to 8 wins, potentially, more. It wouldn't shock me, but I think that Texas A&M fans expect to win this game. But I do think the feel around College Station is that people are rapidly gaining respect for this South Carolina football program, myself included in that.
Andrew Stefaniak of Locked On Aggies podcast. Check out his work. Andrew, let everybody know where they can find your work.
Yeah, folks, the Locked On Aggies podcast. Those interested, we're getting ready to rock and roll for the matchup between the Aggies and the Gamecocks. You can find my stuff on YouTube, Locked On Aggies, or anywhere you find your podcast, whether that's Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find them, I'm there. So, if you're interested or want to hear about that game when it comes up, check me out. I'd really appreciate it.
Andrew, appreciate you taking the time, my friend. Let's definitely do it again soon.
Awesome. Appreciate you.
Okay, that was Andrew Stefaniak of Locked on Aggies podcast, and I expect we will do some work during the regular season when that game does come up. I'm sure we'll be collabing, talking Gamecocks and Aggies in week 9. Yes, John Everett, it's week 9 because you have to include the bye week. Week 9, game 8 of the 2023 football season. Again, guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much for the continued love and support. We're going to go ahead and get into it because we've got a lot of content to get in over the next 45 minutes or so, because Jake Crane will join the show at 1:15. I would assume Jake will be calling in. He's actually on his honeymoon right now, or part 2 of his honeymoon or something like that in France. But he's going to call in. We're going to talk some college football, talk some Gamecocks, talk some things that he's been discussing on social media. But in the meantime, guys, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. Again, guys, we've been breaking down the Gamecocks quarterbacks heading in the 2023 football season. And as you know, we talk things like top storylines, best overall, most to prove, season will be successful if, and give my overall grade for that position unit as well. And when it comes to some other position units, best overall may not be so obvious as it is with the quarterbacks. But when you look at this position group and you look at who leads this position group heading in the 2023 season, again, just a quick reminder, Luke Doty, Spencer Rattler, Tanner Bailey, Lenoris Sellers, and Colton Gauthier. When you look at who leads this position group as the best overall in 2023, it is no question that it is QB1 Spencer Rattler. Now, you look at the stats a season ago, 264 for 399, a 66% completion percentage. He threw for 3,026 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. He also had 73 carries for 46 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. One of those was a very big rushing touchdown in that Clemson game where I thought Spencer Rattler showed great toughness. He lowered his shoulder and was able to get the score for the Gamecocks. Why this is such an interesting talking point, though. Number one, anytime you're talking about Spencer Rattler, it's entertaining, it's polarizing. He's just someone that moves the needle, not just in the Gamecock community, but nationally in college football as well. But for me personally, and I'm going to come clean on something, admittedly, guys, I have high hopes and expectations for Spencer Rattler in this season. However, I was higher on Spencer Rattler at this time last year than I am currently. I truly felt that South Carolina was missing the quarterback. They were missing that guy under center. And that maybe, just maybe, that was the only missing piece, and that Spencer Rattler could be that guy who made his team around him better. Now, I'm not saying he didn't do that at times last year. But I felt as if, as the season progressed, Spencer Rattler went from, for me personally now, this one of the best quarterbacks in college football to a couple of games go by, and I felt like, okay, he's mortal. He's mortal. He is maybe not who I thought he was going to be. You want to blame Marcus Satterfield? You want to blame Spencer Rattler and his decision-making? You want to blame Spencer Rattler and his lack of ball security? You want to blame Shane Beamer? I don't care who you want to blame. But the bottom line is this. Through 10 weeks of the 2022 season, Spencer Rattler was one of the worst quarterbacks in the SEC. And there are plenty of numbers that back that up. Now, on the flip side, in the final 3 games, I'd argue he was one of, if not the best quarterback in college football. What he did against Tennessee, Clemson, And even against Notre Dame in a game which South Carolina was obviously shorthanded. What's interesting about Spencer Rattler is this. You look at his career path. 2019 for Oklahoma, he's a true freshman. He goes 7 for 11, 81 yards, a touchdown, doesn't really play. That was the Jalen Hurts year in Norman. 2020, Spencer Rattler takes over the reins and flourishes. 214 for 317, a 67.5% completion percentage. 3,031 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 7 picks. He also ran for 6 touchdowns in that season, 81 carries, 160 yards. Heading into 2021, guys, he is regarded as probably the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft, the best quarterback in college football, and it's not even close. That 2021 season, as we all know, he loses his job to Caleb Williams, who is now at Southern Cal, and who is now regarded as the best quarterback in college football. 2021, Rattler went 140 for 187, 74.9% completion percentage, so a really good completion percentage, 1,483 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. We should also note this, by the way, the offensive line that he was behind at Oklahoma, okay? That offensive line that he was behind, in that full season in 2020 that he played, he was only sacked 22 times. And I think for them, honestly, those weren't great numbers. Last season at South Carolina, Spencer Rattler was sacked 31 times. Almost 3 sacks allowed per game by the Gamecocks offensive line. So it was not all on Spencer Rattler a season ago. I want to make that very clear. It was not. But this is the year for me where, as I mentioned yesterday, I just feel it's going to go one or two ways. It's going to go one of two ways. Either Spencer Rattler we're going to look back on 2023 and his career and say, we got what we were hoping. We got what we expected. Spencer Rattler's career here was a success. We're going to look back and say he was good, but the Rattler era in Columbia somewhat fell short of expectations. And looking back at last season, there's evidence to support both claims. Again, guys, abysmal those first 10 games. 8 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and that's including the Vanderbilt game. You take that game out, I mean, those numbers were horrific. Last 3 games of the year, 10 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. What he did in the Tennessee game, one of the best quarterback performances in school history, guys. Which version does South Carolina get more of? I see a lot of people on social media, the chatter, the hype is building, obviously. But I think for those who think it's just as simple as South Carolina is just going to carry over what they did in the Tennessee and the Clemson and Notre Dame games, and they're going to pick up right where they left off. Guys, it's a brand new roster. It's a brand new OC. There are some different pieces. Can they align all those pieces by the time week 1 gets around? Can they align all those pieces by the time, more importantly, SEC play gets around and set Spencer Rattler up to have his best season as a college quarterback? He's got the potential. He's got the arm talent. He's obviously by far the best quarterback on this roster right now. Who knows what Lenore Sellers' future may hold? But he's the best quarterback right now on this roster. Ideally, we're seeing Spencer Rattler all year long under center, obviously. But the 2023 season, this 2023 season, it's not just important for Shane Beamer. It's not just important for Gamecocks football. It's not just important for Gamecock fans. This 2023 season is more than likely going to define Spencer Rattler's legacy, not just at South Carolina, but as a collegiate quarterback as well. Guys, we're going to jump into our first break of the day. On the other side, we'll keep the conversation rolling here on this Wednesday. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie, ho. Muscle Dougie, ho.
What's up, guys? We're back here on this Wednesday, July the 26th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, Again, thank y'all so much for the continued love and support, guys. By the way, we've got some really exciting things happening on the merchandise side of the business. I teased it this morning. Women's cut crop top shirts, Beamer Ball specifically. We've got some camo trucker hats coming as well. Got our beat line that we're collaborating with the College Collection and Walker Kennedy Art, who does a fantastic job. We're collabing with those guys as well. So really, really exciting things on the merchandise side of the business as we get closer and closer to kickoff in this 2023 season. You guys definitely make sure you stay tuned for that. And of course, yours truly will be sharing everything. With that being said, we're going to continue the conversation, guys, talking Gamecocks quarterbacks. What will define success for South Carolina signal callers in this upcoming 2023 season? And I'm going to break this down by different facets, different players, because I think there's a couple of things that we need to see happen in this quarterback room, and it goes beyond just QB1. But for obvious reasons, we're going to start with him. And you might recall, guys, around this time last year, of course, we did this, and I defined success for the 2022 season for Spencer Rattler as simply be selected in the NFL draft, because the Gamecocks have not had a quarterback taken in the NFL draft since April of 1990 when Todd Ellis was selected. Spencer Rattler's going to get drafted. He's going to break that streak. I am confident in that. He could have an average season. I think because of arm talent alone, you are going to see Spencer Rattler selected. But let's start with QB1. What he needs to do in order to have a successful season, and if he does nothing else besides this, right? Because I think people immediately want to talk about how many yards he's got to throw for, how many touchdowns, this. If he does nothing else but limit the turnovers, I'll damn near look at that as a success. Limit the turnovers. I'm talking single-digit interceptions and fumbles. Guys, I was going back and looking at Spencer Rattler's stat line game by game for the 2022 season. Do you realize that Spencer Rattler threw at least one interception in 8 of 13 games a season ago? We all remember the finish to the season. 10 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Take that Tennessee game away, because that is an outlier. That's a one-off. That's not the norm. That was a crazy night in Columbia, and we all love it. And you can never take that off his resume. But for the sake of the conversation, right, we understand that is an anomaly. 6 touchdowns, no picks, 81% completion percentage, 438 yards. It's just not going to happen on a week-in, week-out basis. The final 2 games of the season, Spencer Rattler, 360 yards against Clemson, 246 against Notre Dame. Very solid. I think we'd all agree he was much better in those games. 4 total touchdowns, 3 interceptions in those 2 games. So if you take away the outlier of Tennessee, he still was Spencer Rattler that we had seen all season. A little bit better, obvious, in regards to finally throwing the ball downfield, but still not taking care of the football. You saw it in the Clemson game. The only reason we don't talk about it more, guys, is because it didn't cost South Carolina. Had the Gamecocks lost 33-31, if Clemson goes down there, kicks a field goal, we are spending this offseason having much different conversations. You know it. I know it. We all know it. We're not talking about the 72-yard touchdown pass to Juice Wells. We're not talking about the great touchdown run. We're not talking about this throw or that throw. We're talking about the pick 6. We're talking about the pick in the end zone. Those are things that Spencer Rattler has to eliminate. He has to eliminate those just back-breaking interceptions. He has to eliminate the turnovers because, guys, South Carolina somehow, some way has found a way in the first 2 seasons of Shane Beamer to overcome having the most turnovers in the SEC. Shane Beamer has pointed it out. If the Gamecocks are going to match the win total of last year, or God forbid exceed it, Spencer Rattler has to eliminate the turnovers. At least cut them in half. Get to single-digit turnovers, interceptions, and fumbles. Take better care of the football. Spencer Rattler also just has to be more consistent, guys. It can't be so night and day, one week to the next. And I think with Dowell Loggins, I think you're going to see a much more consistent product. I mean, you looked at some of the stat lines last year, guys. I mean, it was crazy. 187 passing yards against Charlotte, 212 against South Carolina State, a game in which he threw 2 touchdowns and 2 picks, 177 against Kentucky, right? You throw for 200 against Vandy, 3 TDs, no picks. You then have 145 the next week against Florida in just an abysmal game. So finding more consistency, again, I think with a better plan, with a simpler plan, with Dowell Loggins calling the plays, I think there will be, from week to week in the SEC, guys, it's crazy. It's madness. But I just don't think you're going to see it to such extremes, if you will, where Spencer Rattler one week, it's like he can't miss. And the next, it's like, who is this walk-on who stole Spencer Rattler's jersey? In regards to statistically, for me, guys, I look at Spencer Rattler, a successful season for him, 3,400 or more passing yards and 20 or more touchdowns. And I think those expectations are very doable, especially when you look at last year and how inconsistent and how abysmal the offense was at times. And he still hit the 3,000-yard mark. 3,400 yards, 20 or more touchdowns. I think that's very doable for QB1. And my last thing, guys, is this. In regards to defining success, Spencer Rattler, take over at minimum 1 game this season, similar to Tennessee a season ago. I'm not saying go throw for 440 and 6 touchdowns. That's not what I'm saying. But I said this last summer, and I'll say it again. This football team's going to go as far as 7 takes them. When you factor in the questions on this team, hey, we're going to start talking running backs tomorrow. We're going to have some real honest conversations starting tomorrow. But when you factor in there's not going to be much of a running game. There's going to be weeks this team's one-dimensional. Spencer Rattler, this team's going to go as far as 7 takes him. He's going to have to put this team on his right shoulder. And his play is going to directly dictate what South Carolina does. And I just don't feel like, we talk about swing games, Kentucky, Missouri, Clemson at home to end the season, North Carolina to start it, Texas A&M. If you're really that dude, you have a game or two like that where, again, you don't throw for 440 and 6 touchdowns, but you take over because you're that guy. You're that talented. You're that special. I need to see that again from Spencer Rattler because now we know it's in there. Now we know he's capable of it if everything is clicking. I need to see that signature game from Spencer Rattler yet again this season. Getting off of QB1, guys, in regards to talking what's going to define success for this quarterback group, in my opinion, I think find creative ways to use LaNorris Sellers. I mean, listen, we've heard all offseason about this guy, how special he is, the combination of size, speed, agility. The staff, those in the building are so high on this kid and what he can do. You're going into a season in which you're going to have to manufacture some sort of running game, right? And the running game, listen, it could exceed expectations. It could be much better than we all expect. But I think right now, if we're being realistic, it is fair to assume South Carolina, at least early on, is going to struggle running the football. They're going to have to figure some things out. It may not show against North Carolina. It may not show against Furman. But you start playing the likes of Georgia, Mississippi State, Tennessee, you get on down the line of SEC defensive fronts, SEC defenses, the running game is probably going to be a question mark. Who can help in that? A guy like LaNorris Sellers. And I just think it'd be a shame if, we've heard about this kid all offseason, and you're trying to get your best 11 out there. You got to get creative. I think finding creative ways to use LaNorris Sellers could be the difference in winning and losing a ball game. You think back to 2006, the way Florida used Tim Tebow. I'm not comparing LaNorris Sellers to Tim Tebow. But, man, what a weapon and what an asset it is down there. You get down to the 5-yard line, you need to get creative, right? Offensive line maybe is outmanned, can't get a push. In comes Lenoris Sellers. And then all bets are off at that point. He can run, he can throw, he's a physical specimen, he can beat you in a number of ways. I think if you don't get Lenoris Sellers in there, if you don't use Lenoris Sellers, if you don't utilize his skill set, I don't think you're exhausting all options to be successful on the offensive side this season. Find creative ways to utilize one of your most talented players on your roster. And finally, guys, for me, in regards to defining success for this quarterback room, I want to see, let me say this. I want to see Spencer Rattler all season long. And it's all about winning now. But getting reps for backups, such as Luke Doty, Tanner Bailey, I mentioned Lenoris Sellers, and Colton Gauthier. And it's a tricky thing to balance because the priority is winning football games now. The priority is making sure you take care of what you can take care of right now. Because, hey, guys, a year from now, we don't even know who's going to be on the roster. Welcome to this age of college football with transfer portal and NIL. But simultaneously, you are building for the future. And so whether it's in games against Furman, Jacksonville State, Vanderbilt, heck, I don't know, maybe against a North Carolina you can get up. Maybe against a Kentucky at home. Maybe I don't know what game it is. Mississippi State at home, whatever game it is. I think getting those backups some experience, just getting them out there in front of 80,000 at Willie B. Just getting them out there in some live bullets, some live action. Because there is nothing that can simulate that in practice. There's nothing that can simulate that in a scrimmage. And I would feel much better about the quarterback situation next year. We all feel like it's going to be Lenoris Sellers. I would feel much better about that competition and that situation. Again, going back to this, if a guy like Sellers had been in some big-time moments, if a guy like Luke Doty continued to grow and get more experience, if a guy like Tanner Bailey actually saw some reps, maybe even a Colton Gauthier, if those guys came in with nobody wants to go into 2024 with, hey, it's a quarterback room and nobody's got any snaps under their belt. Not going to be an ideal situation. So, getting those guys in there, building for 2024 while also winning now in 2023, I think was key for South Carolina's quarterback room as well. Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, we'll keep the conversation rolling and get into our conversation with my good friend Jake Crane of Crane & Company. Should be a lot of fun, guys. Appreciate you all tuning in. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie, ho. Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Wednesday, July the 26th, 2023. Again, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Another update, by the way, on our online store. Orders are beginning to ship out as we speak. I will update you on this, and some of you will realize why you have not gotten your merch. If you ordered the Beamer Ball tumbler, specifically, those took about 2 weeks to fulfill. So, we are waiting to send you your entire order when we can send it all together when we get those tumblers in. So do not worry, your order has not been forgotten, but we are waiting for those tumblers to get in. I understand guys like Brendan M in the Big Cock Club Discord, my guy GA, they are wondering where their orders are. So that is your explanation. Just want to make that very clear. And Brendan, do not worry. I'll get to all of your questions. In our Power Hour because there's a lot to discuss, a lot to debate, a lot to talk about based off what I just had to say about Spencer Rattler and the Gamecocks quarterbacks. Keeping that conversation rolling as we conclude our breakdown of the Gamecocks quarterback position unit heading in the 2023 football season. I hand out my grade for the group entering kickoff. And as you all know, I'm somewhat of a harsh grader. I'm very honest. I don't grade on a curve more often than not, and we will go through and grade each and every single one of these position units. So starting with the quarterbacks. This is a room, I think it is as deep as South Carolina has had probably since the 2013 season, when the Gamecocks had the likes of Connor Shaw and Dylan Thompson. You know, I joke with people going into that 13 season, I believe it was, when you have two quarterbacks on your team poster, you know you got a deep quarterback room, right? Both Connor Shaw and Dylan Thompson were on that 2013 team poster, you might recall. But just a couple of weeks ago, I did my quarterback rankings in the SEC entering the 2023 football season. And Spencer Rattler ranked 4th on my list behind KJ Jefferson, Jaden Daniels, and Will Rogers, and one spot ahead of Joe Milton. There is no denying the potential that Spencer Rattler has. I mean, this is a guy that I would argue there are very few, if any, that have ever had more pure talent and raw ability than Spencer Rattler has in the history of Gamecocks football at that position. We saw it last year, into the season, against Tennessee, against Clemson, against Notre Dame. We saw what he's capable of. And you look behind him. Luke Doty, I know we love to make jokes at this point. Luke Doty shouldn't be QB2. But guys, realistically, it is a luxury to have a guy like Luke Doty who at minimum, he has SEC starting experience, and God forbid something happened. I think Luke Doty, believe it or not, is a quarterback that could still carry the Gamecocks to a 6-win season. I really, truly, genuinely believe that. He is a serviceable backup. South Carolina is not in a position where they have to thrust a true freshman into that role. You then look at a guy like Tanner Bailey, who was a redshirt freshman, did not play last year, but a blue chipper out of the state of Alabama. That's not a bad guy to have in your quarterback room, is it? And then, of course, there's Lenoris Sellers, who I think we all believe is the quarterback of the future at South Carolina based off size, speed, arm strength, the measurables, if you will, and a guy who's done nothing but win throughout his career as a quarterback. Then there's Colton Gauthier as well. Let's not forget. I know many of us are surprised that Colton's still on this roster, and I don't know what his future holds. But, I mean, this was a guy, based on the service you look at, was a 3-star by 24/7, but a 4-star quarterback by Rivals. And you look at his offer list. This guy had like 25 offers. He had offers from everywhere. So when you look at the depth of this quarterback room, and it's all, of course, led by Spencer Rattler, what he can do as your QB1, I give the Gamecocks quarterback position heading into the 2023 football season, I give this unit an A grade with the potential to move up if Spencer Rattler is able to have his best season as a collegiate quarterback. If Spencer Rattler can limit the turnovers. If Spencer Rattler can be more consistent. This guy he could finish the season as an all-SEC quarterback, top 3, top 2. I really think the ceiling for this guy is unreal. I mean, really, truly, he could be one of the best quarterbacks in college football. If some of the issues persist from a season ago, it's a different story. But I think when you look at the potential of a guy like Rattler, the depth you have in that room, an A for the Gamecocks quarterbacks is a fitting grade heading into the 2023 football season. Guys, we'll jump into one more break before we get Jake Crane on the phone lines to talk all things South Carolina football, SEC, and more here on this Wednesday. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie, ho. Muscle Dougie, ho.
What is up, guys? We are back here on this Wednesday, July the 26th, 2023. Hope you're all doing well. Chris Phillips here, your host of the Daily Crow of the Spurs Up Show. We're going to be getting Jake Crane on in just about a minute or so, maybe less than 30 seconds. I have no idea. There he is. We're going to talk some Gamecocks and SEC football.
Jake.
There he is. He joins us every single week here on the airwaves. Jake Crane, who is currently not even in the United States, enjoying his honeymoon, I believe. Jake, what's going on, my man? Feels good to be good. Hey, what's up?
Man, no, I'm not a spy, number one, regardless of what you hear from Blaine or Tone. But no, man, over here in France, finally getting to finish our honeymoon, having a great time, got a couple days left. But obviously this close to football season, man, I can't duck the smoke.
Jake, you know that Vandy started fall camp today. Like, we're here, baby. We're rocking. It's on. We're getting after
it. Yeah, look, I mean, I'll take it at this point. Is it Vanderbilt? Yes, which, by the way, they can be pretty sneaky. But, yeah, look, whatever gets it here faster, I'm down with.
Yeah, Jake, I was going to say, too, I saw your tweet where you said, P.S., I'm not a spy. And Cone replied and said, that is something a spy would say. I thought that was absolutely hilarious. I audibly laughed when I read that tweet. So really good stuff. And the boys are doing a good –
well, it's not true. Yeah, it's not true. If I was a spy, it'd be for America, not the French. I mean, that'd be the lamest place to be a spy for.
I love it. Well, Jake, again, I appreciate you taking the time. Obviously, we're the week following SEC Media Days. I know you and I spoke last Friday, but I think it was just before the SEC released the media selections for East, West, what have you. Let me ask you this. Why did you vote for Vanderbilt? Because I know it was you, Jake.
Yeah, first off, it wasn't me, or maybe I am a spy. I want to know who it is. I feel like we should be transparent, right? I feel like you should be able to know who voted for who. I think it'd be, great exposure for some media people as well. But I want to know who voted for Vanderbilt. Which one of y'all did it? What, who was – I feel like it's a big name. Like, could it be Feinbaum? I don't know.
I honestly, Jake, I'm more curious. There was one vote to win the SEC for South Carolina. I said this last night. I'm going to go ahead and put it out there again. Whoever you are, I want you on the show. I just want to hear you out. I want to understand you. Like, honestly, I would welcome that. So,
Chris,
I don't know.
Chris, look, we know it was you, dog. We know it was you. You need to come out and say it. Listen, I'm not going to be mad at you. We understand. Somebody's got to believe. It's like that kid, the little kid from Angels in the Outfield.
Jake, you know as well as anybody, I'm way too brutally honest and have way too much self-awareness to ever make that type of pick. I gotta come clean and be transparent with you, my guy.
You are. It definitely wasn't you, but again, just even more reason to find out who did it.
Indeed. Jake, so we're talking Gamecocks quarterbacks. I've gotten into my position unit preview series for South Carolina. We spent the last 2 days talking quarterbacks. I graded the quarterback room as a whole an A at South Carolina, which I think is very fair. But, it's interesting, Jake. You dive into Spencer Rattler's numbers from a season ago, and obviously, and I think it's one of those things, too, where I feel it from Shane Beamer because I feel the same way where it's like, everybody, and for good reason, wants to talk about Tennessee and Clemson and the way you finish. And I'm sure he's just like me. I'm like, okay, that was last year. Let's get to this year. Like, it's time for a new season, time to turn the page, as great as that was. But you look at Rattler's last 3 games, and he had that Tennessee game because I've been talking about today, Jake, what will define success for him? Limiting the turnovers, single-digit interceptions, taking better care of the football. Because that Tennessee game, I'm not trying to take it away, but 438, 6 touchdowns, no picks. It was the anomaly. It was the outlier, which is totally fine. It's one of the greatest performances in school history. But you look down the stretch, he was much better, obviously, against Clemson and Notre Dame. But even in those games, Jake, had 2 picks against Clemson. One of them was a pick 6, and one of them was in the end zone. And then you look at Notre Dame. He had another interception there as well. So for me, Jake, and I'll let you expand on this, Spencer Rattler has the ability to, when it's all said and done, heck, I think he could be an all-conference quarterback. Truly, he has that potential. Taking care of the football, Jake, is just that's the biggest thing I think I see in his game. If he's going to have a successful season, if he's going to elevate his draft stock, he's got to find a way. And he admitted this at SEC Media Days that sometimes I just trust my arm too much. It's one of those things. Do you feel like it's a slippery slope where it's like you don't want to stop a guy being himself because that's what makes him so good? But I think sometimes Spencer Rattler being that gunslinger, that's what gets him into the most trouble.
Well, look, I think the answer is consistency. Throughout the year, everybody keeps asking, are we going to get into the year Spencer Rattler? You're going to get beginning of the year Spencer Rattler. And that's tough with the situation they have up front. Look, football, we talk about this all the time, Chris. It's not baseball. It's not basketball. One guy can't go out there and do it on his own. It is truly the best team sport there is because you have to have 11 guys or at least be good enough up front to be able to move as one organism. So it's not just on him, but when he does get the opportunity, whether it's inside the pocket, whether it's outside the pocket, he's got to make the best decision possible. Sometimes that's throwing the ball away. It's not playing hero ball. And when you get back into a corner a little bit, sometimes that happens. So when I look at Spencer, the biggest word is consistency. It's the most obvious word for a reason. And I think any South Carolina fan that's truly being honest with themselves would tell you the same thing. But it's easier to be consistent when there's consistency around you. And I think that's the biggest question mark for South Carolina. It's not at the skill position. Even when you lose Jaheim Bell, who I'm really high on, even when you lose Marshawn Lloyd, who we're both really high on, if they can play well enough up front, if they can protect them and have a solid run game, I think Spencer could have a big year. If not, he's going to have to try and play hero ball, and we all can't be Neo from the Matrix.
And, Jake, I don't know if it's because you've been listening to me too much or as we get closer to the season, we have a greater understanding about these football teams, their strengths, their weaknesses, their question marks. But I've seen you on social media, obviously, talking about, and you've been tagging us, and we've been going back and forth about the line of scrimmage. And you've mentioned that if Gamecock fans are honest with themselves, that is the big question mark. That is the big concern. And, I mean, I say this, Jake, how can it not be? I mean, you returned 50 less starts than you had last year. Jalen Nichols, your best offensive lineman, goes down for probably the entire season in the spring game. I mean, it gets old, man. I beat it into the skulls of my of the people that tune into this show, but it really does just at the end of the day. Like, I think that's why you see so much inconsistency is because when you can't, Spencer Rattler was sacked 31 times last year, and you had a rushing offense that finished outside of the top 100. It's a miracle they move the ball at any rate, right? When you think about those numbers. So offensively, defensively, line of scrimmage, I've said it many times, Jake, I'll say it again. I think that's the thing for South Carolina. If they're going to take the next step as a program, get to winning, let's just say 8 to 9 consistently year in, year out, that's what they have to fix more than anything.
Well, yeah. Well, how does anybody bridge the gap, right? How did Georgia make this big move to become what they have? They did it up front. How about Michigan? How did they get over the hump against Ohio State? They've done it up front. Even TCU last year surprised everybody. They were a lot better up front than what people thought they were. And Kansas State won the Big 12. Why? Because of up front. So I don't care what system you run, whether it's the air raid, whether it's the triple option, whether it's a bunch of guys getting etch-a-sketch and staring at each other. If you're not good on the offensive line and the defensive line, you will not win consistently in this game.
Jake, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're on your honeymoon, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet with you. Just one last thing. You've been in the trenches. You know what these coaching staffs, you know what these players, you know what these programs are going through as Vanderbilt begins fall camp today. South Carolina will begin fall camp next Friday, and I'm sure all these teams in the SEC over the next week and a half, they're all going to hit the field. Pull back the curtain and just give us an idea, because you and I, right, we just sit here behind the mic and talk smack and talk ball and make picks and all that good stuff. There's real work being put in right now. Like, what are these football teams, these players, these coaching staff specifically, what is that like in fall camp? Because I've heard the stories of, days starting at 5 a.m. and ending at midnight. Just give us perspective on what these teams are going through over the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, well, look, everybody's excited, especially early. But I used to tell my guys all the time, look, anybody can get excited about day 1 of fall camp. I want guys that are excited about day 8. I want guys that are excited about day 12 when your body's hurting a little bit. Once you put the pads on, you started hitting. Everybody's tired. Everybody's mentally tired. Because again, you're going back through installation with some of these guys, the young guys that you think, everybody in general, but the young guys that you're going to think is going to play. You look at the physicality. You do have that transition period, right? That acclimation period. You start out in what we call, panties or without putting the pads on. Then you go shells. Then you go full. Then you start hitting. And guys want to hit, but eventually, just like in spring practice, you get tired of hitting each other. But who can stay mentally focused enough to get through the fundamentals of the blocking and tackling, working your hand placement, working your hat placement? Now, look, this isn't 1984. They're not doing 3 a days, 4 a days anymore. But still, it's hot. Once you get a couple weeks into it, you're ready to go out there and play a game, but you have to be patient. As far as hours standpoint, you're putting in a ton of hours. Obviously, the best part about it is you're able to do football without doing school yet. The school doesn't start, for a couple weeks. So it's almost like you're in the NFL. You're just doing football. You're eating together. You're practicing together. You're watching film together. You're doing all these things together. And then you get into that, week's prep a couple weeks out. But a lot of it is going back over the installation basics while being able to get ready to put in a game plan. Nobody's doing any game planning stuff yet that isn't a coach. But it's a great time. It's an exciting time. You start to see people around the town are walking around a little bit, with their heads held a little bit higher, and you can just smell it. You can taste it in the air. So it's a great time. But again, I'll say what I said at the beginning. A lot of guys can get excited about day 1, day 2, hell, even day 3. But I want guys that are excited about day 8 and day 9. That's leadership. That's what it's going to take to be able to convert on 4th and 1. So that's where we're at, man. Let's get ready to kick this bad boy off.
Jake, did you ever experience the 2-a-days era, or were you past that? Were you after that?
No, we did 2-a-days. Now my father, who played at Auburn in the 80s, they did 4-a-days. He used to talk about they would sleep in their tape. So when they got up the next morning, they got an extra 10 minutes of sleep. But look, the game's changed, but everybody, is going through the same thing right now. So it's all on an even scale. It's not easy. It's easier. But a lot of it is better because of the safety rules. So at the end of the day, look, everybody's got to go through the same thing. It's always tough, and you find out who's really about it.
Well, Jake, I appreciate you taking the time, man. It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for calling in from your honeymoon, by the way. Let Miss Crane and Company know we appreciate you letting us steal you for a couple of minutes, man. Go enjoy the rest of your vacation.
Yeah. She's actually holding me at gunpoint right now. I'm just kidding. No, I will, man. It's always great to call and talk to you, man. Let's get this thing started.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you, Jake. Have a good one. Great stuff from Jake Crane of Crane and Company. Love that. Guys, we'll go ahead and keep it rolling. We don't need another break for a little bit. We're going to jump in, take your questions, your comments, your calls. The phone lines are open at 843-790-3377. Let's start off on a hot note. Braddock says, according to the Twitter clowns, I tuned in the Daily Crow to find out who Chris wants us to hate. I don't even know what that means, Braddock. I genuinely don't know what that means. I have never insinuated to hate anyone. I would not suggest it because being in a place of hatred is that's a bad place to be in. I would say don't hate anyone. Now, there are some you don't. I'll put it to you. This is how I apply it in my personal life. I don't hate anyone. There are some people, for example, in a real life situation, somebody breaks your trust. You don't have to hate that person. You don't have to judge that person even, but you don't have to associate with them either. You don't have to rock with them either. So, I would say don't ever harbor hate. Don't ever hold on to it. And as I've said many times, don't hold a grudge because a grudge only hurts the person who's holding it at the end of the day. Truly, that is, if you really think about that statement, that's a fact. So, Braddock, anyways, I appreciate you tuning in. We do our very best here to keep you guys informed, entertained, all that good stuff. Let's get back into some of your questions here. Brian Dean, my question, how's Tennessee getting out of those serious infractions and years ago infractions that were not as serious changed the face of SMU football? Brian Dean, because the NCAA makes things up as they go along. Let's get to the Big Cock Club Discord here. Let's get to the Big Cock Club Discord. Lot of feedback and takeaways and banter from our guys in there about the quarterback conversation. Brendan M. had this to say. Sorry to break it to you, Chris Phillips, but you can't take away the Tennessee game. Take away the worst game then, Slapdick. Dalton then chimes in. Yeah, if you take away the Tennessee game, you also take away the Florida game. I'm going to break your brain for a moment. What if I told you the Florida game wasn't the worst game of the season for Spencer Rattler? And we can play that game. I mean, we can, listen, we can most certainly play that game. Let's play it. You ready? Spencer Rattler, I would deem, let's see if y'all agree. I think his worst game was against Georgia. He went 13 of 25 for 118 yards, 52% completion percentage, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I think that was a worse game because you might recall this. In the Florida game, he didn't throw a pick. He went 18 of 26, 145, 69% completion percentage. He didn't throw an interception in that game. So that was not Spencer Rattler's worst game of the season. So let's take away the best and the worst. That will give us a more accurate representation. You're absolutely correct, Dalton and Brendan. Take away Tennessee, 6 touchdowns. Let's take away Georgia, 2 picks. So Spencer Rattler last year, if you take away his best game and his worst game, threw 12 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. You're not helping your point out at all. You're only reinforcing what I've been saying. You're only reinforcing the points that I've been making. That's all you're doing. The poorest performances were much more common than the good ones. And again, I'm not trying to take away anything he did in the Clemson and Notre Dame games, but I'm just making the point that turnovers were still there. Would anybody disagree with that? Brendan says that C. Philly really just 15 minutes ago lumped the Tennessee defense with Georgia and Mississippi State. Brendan, I'm just simply making the point that Tennessee has an SEC defensive line. They couldn't stop the pass last year. They couldn't stop the pass. They weren't that bad against the run. Lynn Turner says most quarterbacks had their worst game against Georgia. That's not a fair comparison. Okay, Lynn, we'll keep going down the line. I'd say outside of the Georgia game, I'd probably say his worst performance was the first game of the season against Georgia State. 1 touchdown, 2 picks. Let's jump to the phone lines here.
Call from
1,000.
What's going on, man? How are you?
What's up, Mr. Phillips with the Spurs Up Show? How you doing today, man?
I'm doing fantastic, man. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Just at work chilling for a minute. First off, I wanted to say congratulations. I've been a fan of the show for the past 5 years, picked up notes whenever I can, and seeing you meet a goal as far as going to SEC Media Days, the way you handled yourself, asking tough questions, asking good questions, as much as you do for us, the underground fans. I just wanted to commend you and give you your flowers on a great job and achieving that goal, my man.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you. And if you've been following along that long, which sounds like you have, man, then you know why that's so special and how cool that is. And we've come a long way for sure. And I like to believe that we're still just getting started.
And speaking on I actually got a football related thing too, but since we're on the subject, speaking on the show, man, the thing that I will be honest, whenever you were talking about doing like a SEC unplugged and being able to, I guess they called guys like you was, I was a little on the fence about it because I wasn't sure exactly how it was going to play out. But as you bringing in Drake Crane and then you brought in the guy, I forgot his name, from the Aggies today, and seeing stuff like that, dude, I really, not as a Gamecock fan, but as a college football fan, and maybe it can turn over into baseball and basketball, I like the direction it's going, and I love it, and I think that is just a superb fucking idea, man. That is because it's not polished, it's not pretty, it doesn't have a bow on it, it's raw, it's unfiltered, and it's for the trenches college sports fans. So I really like what you're doing with that, dude. That is a genius idea, and I hope it progresses into something more. And like I said, dude, I just wanted to give you a congratulations on going to media days. For some reason, South Carolina, the powers that be, want to be dicks and block you out, but we find ways around things. There's always a gray area, you know?
Yeah, and again, it's all love from this side. Now, I'm just glad we got the opportunity, man, and I feel like we had a kick-ass week. And no, I appreciate the kind words too, man. You know, organically, it's happened that we've been talking. I'm leaning into more SEC content, talking more all SEC than I ever have before, and you know, obviously, still being a Gamecock guy, and of course, this is still a Gamecock show. It is the Spurs Up show, but again, it's no secret that you know, leaning into the SEC stuff and talking more SEC, and you know, more than likely, one of those days, sort of rebranding as a Gamecock guy that also, though, talks the entire SEC. I mean, it's a cool thing, man. It's a fun thing because I love the Gamecocks for sure. But, I mean, I'm a college football fan. I'm an SEC football fan, an SEC fan in general. You mentioned baseball, basketball, obviously. So it's something I'm excited to see continue, watch it grow organically and as we go into basketball and baseball as well. And it's a lot of fun, man. So I appreciate the kind words. And like I said, I appreciate you following along on SEC Media Days, man. It was a blessing to be able to ask Shane Beamer a question, and I thought it was a great question. I thought Coach Beamer answered it well, and I appreciate him doing so, and looking forward to more opportunities in the future.
And segueing into the SEC Media Days, that actually brings me up to my hypothetical game playing point. I know, I'm just going to say this before the chat rips me to shreds. I know without a shadow of a doubt at the end of this year, regardless, Rattler is going to the SEC or going to the NFL, and he's probably going to be the first round pick from a Gamecock football player as far as quarterback since Ellis. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, Beamer did make the comment about Rattler. Oh, well, there's a possibility we could have him for 3 years. So just to stir the pot, what do you think would happen, and how big of an impact would it be? Let's say everything goes garnet glasses on perfect according to schedule. We come out, we light North Carolina up, we pick up where we left off. We have a great year. We're kind of hurting the trenches on both sides of the line, offense and defense. We did add some weapons for Rattler, but that's going to help recruiting if Rattler comes back. And they're like, oh, well, they got Trey Knox the ball. They've done great things with Harbor. Look what they did with Dak. I'm a wide receiver. Alabama and these other teams have passed me up, but, you know, hey, I could play there. I want to go to South Carolina. So what do you think would the outcome of that be? What's your point of view on if that was to happen? Which we know it won't, but just what if?
But you're saying if Spencer Rattler had a great year and decided to come back next year,
yeah, like let's just say we go
just hypothetically.
Let's say we go 9-3.
Yeah. Hypothetically, if Rattler, he wants to just run it back for whatever reason. Which I mean, I think we all agree he'd be gone. But if just for fun, number one, I think there'd be a ripple effect in the quarterback room. I think absolutely there's going to be a couple of guys that would probably dip out. I mean, I'm just guessing. I mean, it's hard to like project who's going to transfer, and it's a tricky thing because nobody wants anybody to transfer. But I wonder would that change the dynamic in the quarterback room? But yeah, I mean, do I think people would be excited to come play with Spencer Rattler? And I mean, we did say this after last year because it's funny. I mean, I was convinced he was one and done. I was convinced that if he was returning in 2023, it meant something went horribly wrong in 2022. And, you know, that wasn't necessarily the case, although you could say for the first 10 games that was the case. So, you know, I think I will say this, and you know what, I'm going to say it, getting Rattler back, you know, you picked up Eddie Lewis from Memphis, you picked up Trey Knox from Arkansas. Do we feel like getting Rattler back had the positive impact in the portal we thought it would? I don't know that it did because everybody's situation is different. So, I mean, you know, you'd like to think that Spencer Rattler returning would absolutely boost recruiting and boost the portal and boost everything else. But, I mean, I can't say for certain, but I think it would eliminate a big-time question mark going into 2024 if he were to return. You know, that would be one less question mark, and maybe it would even help South Carolina be the pick in 2024 to be second in the East or challenge Georgia or whatever, especially if you went, say, a 9-3 this year. So, you know, it's a fun hypothetical, but I mean, I said it this time last year, but I'm going to say it again at risk of being wrong again. I would be stunned if that happened.
The only way I could foresee that happening, and it's a big if, and then about the quarterback room, it would probably have to take us going, I'd say 9-3, with the ninth win being in the bowl game. Rattler feeling real comfortable. I think it would take Dal Loggins and Beamer, you know, to really kind of persuade Spencer into it from the point of view of, hey, man, look, you came back, you increased the draft stock. Look at what you did this year. We got close. We could run it back, possibly make a run at the college football playoffs because it's going to be expanded. You could be the first quarterback for South Carolina to lead us to a college football playoff, maybe a playoff win. That's going to boost your draft stock. We're going to get you some more weapons in, and it's going to give us another year to get you protection and get us a better defensive line. And then that, from that point of view, and then the downside of it is our quarterback room. So somebody's going to transfer out.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be Luke Doty because he's been there for a while. I think he's another Dak. I think he's a Carolina guy. I don't think Lenore Stellers would leave because that would be Spencer's last year. So he's definitely gone after that season. So it's going to come down to Luke or either Lenore being your starting quarterback. And then I think it's going to come down to Colton or God, I cannot think of the guys.
Tanner Bailey?
It ain't. Tanner. So I would think Colt would be the one to maybe transfer. Tanner might entertain it, but I think Colt would be the one. And it's no slight against Colt, but he's been here for a while. He really hasn't got playing time. The quarterback room's gotten depth. So if that was to happen, that's how I think it would work with us losing depth in the quarterback room. And I'll just take the rest of that off air. Once again, congratulations, man, and look forward to other great things from the Spurs up there, my guy.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for the kind words, and I appreciate the call. And I'll say this to his point. If Spencer Rattler were to return, I think there would be a ripple effect in that quarterback room. And, it's very difficult to predict, like, who would return or who would transfer out. But, guys, it's the world of the portal. Guys want to play. I wouldn't even blame guys. I would not even blame guys in that room if they wanted to leave. Like, if a Tanner Bailey was like, you know what, I'm good, I want to go play, I'd get it. Like, I'd honestly totally get it. Let's get back to this big cock club Discord stuff. Let's see. Here we go. Dalton says, we all know C. Philly is a narrative and slapdick takes guy, not a well thought out opinion guy. Wow. Okay. All right. And that is your opinion, my friend. Brendan says, I don't think slapdick Chris Phillips remembers that the Rattler pick against Notre Dame came in a Hail Mary at the end of the half after a bogus penalty on Beamer himself. We returned the punt to within field goal range, and the refs decided to say F us. Yes, let's start blaming the referees. I agree. I know SEC refs, so the refs suck, my guy. I get it. Dalton says, at the same time, though, 2 interceptions against SC State weren't really his fault. Both those interceptions were deflected off Xavier Leggett's hands. Actually, listen. Brendan says Dalton knows ball. Dalton says actually a lot of the interceptions were plays at the last couple of minutes of the half, just trying to make something happen, which do show up as turnovers. But if they don't result in points for the other team, they aren't that costly. Dalton, Brendan, both of you, we can play this game all day. You can poke holes in my logic and say, well, that interception was this was this. I can poke holes in some touchdown throws. It's possible. It's possible. There's some touchdowns that, hey, ball could have gotten tipped, ball could have gotten picked. This happened, that happened. What should have been a pass interference? Like, we can do it all day long. All we have to go off of is the stats. And my only point I was making, guys, was that Spencer Rattler needs to protect the football better. I wasn't trying to take away the Tennessee game to like demean Spencer Rattler. My point was simply this, that in 2 of the 3 games that he played his best football in, he threw 3 picks. I don't care if you want to say it was a Hail Mary. I don't care if you want to say it was this, it was the refs. In 2 of the 3 games that we deemed, that we labeled as the best games of the season, and this is when it clicked, he still threw 3 interceptions. It cannot happen. You cannot average a pick a game. It cannot happen. That's the only point I'm making. Would you disagree that Spencer Rattler needs to cut down on the turnovers? I mean, would you disagree? I don't think anybody would disagree with that. And again, we can play the game of, I was simply using that as an example, or like, because again, he's not going to throw 6 touchdowns, 430, no picks every week. Again, I think, I've said this many times, I'll say it again. I think the Clemson game of last year is a great representation of what and who Spencer Rattler is. At his best, he's throwing a 72-yard bomb down the field to Juice Wells. At his best, he's putting his head down and trucking into the end zone for 6. At his best, he's beating the Clemson Tigers, the arch rival, on the road. And at his worst, he's throwing a pick 6. At his worst, he's throwing a back-breaking pick in the end zone. At his worst, he's doing things that cost you football games. That to me, and so the question just comes down to, well, which of that do you get more of in an individual game? That's not unfair. He is not going to do what he did against Tennessee on a weekly basis. If he does it once this season, that's a massive success, because that is one of those nights, guys. It's historic for a reason. It is remembered in Gamecock lore for a reason. It's not the norm. It's not the norm. Austin says, Chris, do you think Heupel took exception to Beamer not letting off the gas up 56-31 with 2:43 left? Personally, I think that pissed Heupel off. Not saying I disagree with it, but definitely think it sent a message. Yeah, I mean, Austin, if he did or didn't is, I mean, whatever, dude. It's stop us. If you don't want us to dance in the end zone, don't let us score. So I don't think if you're Shane Beamer, you should worry about running your offense and building. No, listen, I think you build confidence going into the Clemson game. You absolutely shouldn't say, well, should we have run up the score? Like, bro, you try to score every time you touch the ball. And so, I mean, if Heupel took exception, listen, I think whether Carolina would have won by 1 or by 25 as they did, I mean, I think Tennessee would have took exception to the loss either way. Dalton says, I agree Turner's an issue, but at the same time, it's part of his playing style. He isn't the type of quarterback that's going to make the safe play, checking every time. You have to go to the bat. I don't disagree. You're absolutely reinforcing my points. I don't disagree. He just has to limit the bad. He has to limit the bad. Bottom line. And it's not all just him. He needs to be protected better. 31 sacks last year. He needs a running game to help him. He needs somebody besides Juice Wells to take the pressure, to step up and take the pressure off Juice Wells so Juice can thrive and be his very best. Right? I mean, he needs those things to happen. It's not just him. Austin Hicks says, Gamecock fans hate to hear the truth. They just want you to sit there and blow smoke up their ass about kind of football. And Austin, if you don't realize by now that's not what I'm going to do, I just don't know what rock you've been living under. And I mean, I guess, Austin, listen, I love being named the Spurs Up Show. I love it. But I do think that's unfortunately one of the drawbacks of, when you name your brand, your entity, your business, your show, your content. And I don't know how this is going to be taken by you guys. I'm not saying it in a negative way, but it's just a reality. When you name your entity after the team you're covering, right? I mean, it's no question this is a Gamecock show, the Spurs Up Show. There's no question it's a Gamecocks entity. When you name your entity after the specific school, it's almost as if people, they come into your content, they come into your entity with an expectation that, okay, this entity is going to be all pro things the school they're covering. This is going to be pro everything South Carolina because it is a South Carolina show. And I don't even think, I'll say this. I say pro like there's an anti. I don't think anything I say is anti-South Carolina. It's just analysis and takes and honest opinion. That's all it is. But there's this expectation by some out there that you're a Gamecock show. You should be saying this. You should be saying that. You should be driving this narrative. You should be driving that narrative. And my response to that is this. I'm an independent content creator. South Carolina is my subject matter. If you want to drive an all positive, never speak an ill word, never give a critical opinion, never give any sort of opinion that just banter, never banter at all, just all pro, whatever your agenda is, you can do that. I mean, listen, the internet exists. You can create an entity, you can create a podcast, There's some out there that do that right now in the Gamecock space, and that's awesome. But that's not what this is. And I'm preaching to the choir because y'all know this, but it is funny to me when, again, it's like, it's happened so many times, guys, where it's just like, I'll just give an honest football take that I don't even think is that big of a deal. Like, it's just banter. Like last year, talking about Jordan Birch, saying that, hey, he needs to have a really good year or people are going to start labeling him as a bust. That wasn't even a hot take. And you got people just, this guy is this for the program. He's critical of the program. That's what I do. I'm not obligated to be pro USC 24/7, 365. Guys, I ain't got a check from South Carolina yet. That's the funniest part, too, is if South Carolina wanted me to be like more biased and more favorable, treating me like garbage over the years is not the way to make it happen. I can assure you. Because honestly, the treatment from USC and some of those specifically in the building that I will not name, but we all know. And then honestly, the treatment from, I'd say, the bottom 5-10% of this fan base and some of the horrific things they've said about me, both personally and professionally on social media, guys, those people make it really easy to be objective about South Carolina. It's not hard to remove the fandom. It's not hard to be honest. It's not hard to be realistic. It's just not. It's not. Like, if you want me to be sunshine and rainbows, garnet glasses, accusing me of things that would get you thrown in jail is not the way to get your messaging across. I can assure you. There are ways in this world to get what you want. Being a piece of shit scumbag is not one of them. Saying horrific things about other people is not one of them. Being kind is the way that you do that. Because, guys, here's the thing. If Shane Beamer shot me a DM and said, Chris, this would really help us in recruiting, do you think you could loop this into your content, your subject matter? Guys, I would do it because I'm a South Carolina fan. I would actually do that. People don't even realize this. 2 years ago, South Carolina is recruiting Oscar Delp. Was it on my agenda to run a Oscar Delp campaign? No, not necessarily. I mean, I let the coaches worry about recruiting and we talk ball and that's it. Guys, I was in direct contact. He's no longer on the staff, so we can have this conversation. I was in direct contact with Eric Kimry. Hey, Chris, it'd really help if you kind of hype this up, talked to Oscar Delp, made some graphics, and we did. You might recall, like, I talked about what's the recruit, what's the prospect we need to get. Dude, I was hyping Oscar Delp up left and right. It felt like every other day I was putting up something up about Oscar Delp. And it's because Kimry approached me and was a nice guy, and he respected our work, and he had me on his show before, and he was kind about it. If he hit me up cussing at me and accusing me of things and be like, oh, by the way, can you help me out and do me a favor? I wouldn't do it. So, I mean, I wouldn't change a thing because, again, I'm very happy I'm able to be objective. I'm very happy I'm able to not be blinded by fandom or by, you know what I mean? Like, there's some people, you can't say anything about South Carolina without people just losing their minds. And that's totally fine. Listen, every fan base, every school, they need people who will relentlessly support no matter what and never say a negative word because, hey, those are your fanatics. A lot of them are your boosters. Those are people that have influence. Those are people that, are your top NIL givers. Like, those people, like, those are great people. It's just not me, though. It's just not me. Anyways. Anyways. Dalton says, I agree that being realistic about the team is probably the best thing, but I think a lot of the time you emphasize the bad, but then the good as well. There are issues in the line of scrimmage. At the same time, we've overcome those issues and overachieved 2 years in a row. It's nothing personal. I'm just pushing back a little bit. Dalton, that's fair. My pushback to you would be this, though. I really, truly, Dalton, to your point, I try to not be just critical. I try to give as much credit when credit is due. The problem is, and I'm not saying just you, Dalton, the way social media is wired, people only remember the critical things. They don't remember the praise. They don't remember the positive. Hey, they only remember me criticizing, quote unquote, or setting expectations, I should say, for Jordan Birch in the preseason. And Austin Gregory says, I'm reading it too fast. Here we go. Dalton said, I agree that being realistic about the team's the best thing. But I think a lot of the time you emphasize the bad without emphasizing the good as well. There are issues on the line of scrimmage, but at the same time, we have overcome those issues and overachieved 2 years in a row. It's nothing personal. I'm just pushing back a little bit. So again, Austin, I apologize for reading so quickly because you're right. Those aren't in the YouTube chat. Back to Dalton's point, though. People only remember the critical. That's the more so the problem. People only remember the critical. And I've said this earlier, Dalton, or before, that the audience has a lot of blame to put on themselves. When it comes to like takes on social media, I mean, guys, weeks ago, I put out a clip saying that Dakereon Joyner, he's a great Gamecock. He's going to be a focal point of the offense. This could be his best season in Garnet and Black. Gets a couple thousand views. Pretty good. I put out a tweet saying that Dakereon Joyner is a positionless athlete. Oh, well, I mean, all hell breaks loose. Views, tweets, likes through the roof. The numbers are insane. Why does the negative get more attention than the positive? Why does the critical get more attention than the praise and the positivity? It's the way we're wired because we love the banter. We love the back and forth. You know what I mean? So, and I don't think one side's better than the other, like whatever tickles your fancy. It's funny, man. I've had Gamecock fans and Gamecock people that in the beginning supported TSUS and they fell off, and now they're some of my biggest haters because they just can't stand to have any sort of critical opinion about their favorite team. And that's fine. To each their own. To each their own. To each their own. And I say, guys, it's a blessing and a gift that I'm able to be so objective because, you know, you guys have heard me say it. I'll say it yet again. I mean, I have dreams and aspirations and goals beyond just covering South Carolina. This journey with TSUS has really opened my eyes to the fact that, like, dude, like, we can be an influential member, not just in the South Carolina space, but like the college football space, the college sports space, the SEC space, the national college sports space. Like, we can do that. Like, I rubbed shoulders with the best of the best last week, had conversations with the best of the best last week. Like, we can do it. We can absolutely do it. And that's an exciting thing. And I'll always be a Gamecock guy. But I'm just able to see it objectively. I just am. I'm not blinded by the Garnet and Black glasses. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you that when game day comes around on Saturday, I got 10 reasons why I believe Carolina can win the ball game, man. I'm pulling as hard as anybody. I mean, you don't start it, which it's funny going back to this. And I know we're really just kind of off our rockers today and we're talking about sort of random stuff, but I mean, this is what makes TDC so much fun and the Power Hour so much fun. But, and I almost lost my train of thought there. And again, we're off our rocker, like I said. So maybe that's a sign we should get back to kind of your questions, your comments, everything else. But I think it's an asset to be objective. I think it's an asset to be able to see things for what they are, not what you wish them to be. That's just how I'm wired. My grandfather was the same way, and he was the one that got me into it. My grandfather did not preach, son, you should never say an ill word about South Carolina. South Carolina above all else. My grandfather was very honest. He was very realistic. You know what I mean? He'd say the offensive line stunk. He'd say the quarterback stunk. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he was just very real and genuine, and I'm grateful forever for that. I'm grateful forever for that, and the way he rubbed off on me, and I think it's worked out pretty well to this point. But, the point that I was going to make, you hear some of the chatter, the jokes, whatever. Listen, I wore a Clemson hat when I went to a Clemson baseball camp in high school. Big freaking whoop. You don't start a business. You don't start an entity like, listen, 2017, it was Armchair South Carolina, and we were really at zero. If I was a Clemson fan, right? If I was a Clemson fan, guys, 2017, Clemson was winning national championships. South Carolina had Will Muschamp as their head coach. Why would I have decided to start a business around the South Carolina Gamecocks? If my goal was to pop off, be successful, make merch, make money, why would I have done that? I'm either a complete idiot or the worst entrepreneur on the planet Earth. I mean, straight up. Because my show probably would have grown 5 times as fast because there was a good product to talk about. I mean, that's not a shot at Carolina, but you guys just know there's nothing that does better for business than significant winning. Nothing. Nothing does better for business. So I'll tell you this. I mean, chicken or the egg, right? Chicken or the egg. We've heard it's a not so well-kept secret. It's a not so well-kept secret. We've heard about the NIL challenges at South Carolina. And it should be better than it is. There's just no question. I mean, when I'm hearing things that, hey, Chris, South Carolina's 13th out of 14 SEC teams in NIL, that's a red flag. That's shocking, honestly. To think that Carolina's below schools like Mizzou, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Kentucky. I mean, that's kind of surprising. That's surprising. And so people stepping up, giving, that's something that can help. You know what would help NIL as well? You know what gets people to spend money more than anything? Significant winning. Significant winning. So the best thing Shane Beamer can do to increase the bankroll, go win 8 games again. I mean, straight up. People will invest in a winner. If you show that you're going to put out a consistent winner, folks are going to invest. There's no question. And again, I'm not saying that you got to win before people commit. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But I can attest personally that significant winning, the best thing that can happen to business. So they go hand in hand. I mean, they really do. Now, again, I don't know why a school like Ole Miss or a Mississippi State or a Mizzou has better NIL than South Carolina. I don't get it. I genuinely don't get it. I don't know the behind the scenes, the intricacies of it. I have no idea. Anyways, we've kind of gone off the rails on TDC. We'll get back into your questions. Like I said, I just, it's I feel silly going on those rants because you guys tune in every day. You know what you're getting into when you get into TSUS. But I said it last year in the season. I think it was actually the week after the Mizzou game because, I was in Orlando during that week. I mean, I said it last year, man. I'm not affiliated with the University of South Carolina. I know that's weird for people to hear that, but I'm not. I'm a content creator. South Carolina is my subject matter, but I'm not affiliated with USC in any way. Outside of being a fan, outside of covering the team, not affiliated. Quite the contrary. USC has taken significant action to put me out of business multiple times. So, pretty easy to be objective. Pretty easy to be objective. All right, let's get into your questions. Let's talk ball. I don't want to, there's no point in talking to, which, by the way, we're thriving. We're doing well. And I got nothing but love for USC. And, I will always be a Gamecock fan, guys. That's what stands out above all else. That's what stands out above all else. I'll always be a Gamecock fan. I'll always bleed the garnet and black. It doesn't matter the madness on social media, the way that we're treated on social media by some folks. It doesn't matter the people in the building, maybe that some that don't really favor us. Bro, what stands out above all else is I'll always be a Gamecock. Memories of growing up, watching the Gamecocks, cheering on my grandfather, like those things, and the countless of great people, countless amounts, I should say, of great people that I've met along the way. We've had so many Gamecock legends on this show, Gamecock personalities, like, people in the Big Cock Club Discord. It's Gamecock fans who make TSUS possible. That's the funny thing when you hear people say, this guy's hated by the entire fan base. Well, then how are we doing what we're doing? Because Gamecock fans make this possible. You guys, Gamecock fans. It's not Georgia fans keeping TSUS afloat. It's not Texas A&M fans. It's not, Kentucky fans. It's Gamecock fans. And there are so many that the love is overwhelming more than anything. And I am on a daily basis just beyond grateful for those who show love, show support, stick their necks out when they don't have to. That's the one thing I feel bad about at times is that, people on social media, and I hate this. People on Twitter will be criticized for being a fan of TSUS. Like it's a responsibility to be a fan of TSUS. And I hate that people have to catch that heat, because that heat should all be directed at me. If you got a problem with me, TSUS, that's totally fine. But don't come at people that just enjoy the content, enjoy the business, enjoy the merch. Don't come at those people. That's not fair. You know what I mean? That's just not fair. That's not fair. Direct it at me. I can take it. I've dealt with it for years. I'm completely immune to it now. I'm completely immune to it. So, anyways, I appreciate y'all, man, sincerely. I just can't say thank you enough. There's a reason I lead with gratitude, and it's because I really mean it. I truly am grateful for you guys. Anyways, let's get into your football questions. I've been rambling here. I do apologize for the rambling. Spur Daddy says it'd be nice to see A&M go 0-12. Wow. Jimbo's a shell of the national title coach at FSU. Petrino, the intern, dating Harley Wrecker. Not a fan of Jimbo and Petrino. Okay, you got some strong feelings about Jimbo Fisher. Spur Daddy also says it'd be nice to see the Vols fall flat on their faces after getting that little wrist slap. I guess some programs just got it like that. Spur Daddy, you're not the only Gamecock fan that would like to see Tennessee take a nosedive. That is for sure. That's for sure. Jeff Gullidge, remember the simulations last year? It was a tournament machine too. I'm glad we're citing the simulations as a reason for to support the argument. But man, that sim last night, that was painful. That was painful. I don't know if you guys tuned in last night. We had Georgia tied on the road 22-22, and somehow, some way, our D coordinator. And if you're a real Gamecock, you'll get this. Or if you're, I say old school Gamecock, but a lot of you will get this reference. Some of you younger, newer Gamecocks won't. Jeff and everybody else, I got on my secondaries coach worse than Steve Spurrier did back when he got on Ron Cooper after the 2006 Kentucky game. If you know, you know. Let's see. Justin, glad to be back. New phone, had to make a new account, missed the show. Justin, pleasure to have you. Thank you for tuning in, my friend. Coach Ford says Dontavius Braswell will have to step up. I would agree. Coach Ford says creative ways to get the ball to Dakereon Joyner is key as well. Lining him up beside Rattler and direct snapping to Dak will slow down a defense, for sure. Yep, and I think Dakereon Joyner, Coach Ford, to your point, is going to be a major focal point of the offense this season. Austin Gregory, what we need to happen to go 9-3 or better. Go 4-0 versus North Carolina State, Vandy, and Furman. Go 4-0 versus Jacksonville State, Mizzou, Kentucky, Florida. Go 1-3 against Clemson, Georgia, A&M, Tennessee. I mean, Austin, when you break it down like that, it's doable. I think when you break it down like that, it's doable. I mean, listen, South Carolina, to Dalton's point earlier, South Carolina, you can look at the numbers, you can look at the analytics, you can look at the FPI, Kelly Ford. South Carolina has overachieved at every single turn. And what I'm going to say is going to sound like woo-woo, and I might get crapped on, and that's totally fine. That's totally fine. But what those numbers, what that FPI, what Kelly Ford, what they can't measure is heart, determination, and overall culture. You cannot sit here and tell me the reason that Carolina responded after getting beat 38-6 by Florida. I mean, when you really think about it, if there is a 7-day stretch that speaks to the culture that Shane Beamer has built more than any, it's that 7-day stretch last year at the end of the 2022 season. The Gamecocks get shellacked. I mean, the game was over before it started. 38-6 by a bad Florida team. That was not a good Florida team, guys. They lost to Vandy the following week. Shellacked. 0 offensive points in that game. And I heard Shane Beamer on radio talking about this yesterday, about they had full confidence going into Tennessee. They were a confident group that they could win that game. And I think to myself, and I'm like, I believe him, but I'm like, how? How? Tennessee was 5th in the country. They were a 24-point favorite, and you had just lost 38-6 to Florida, a bad team, a game in which you did not score an offensive point. The fact that Shane Beamer could get that group off the ground, uplift them, instill that confidence, and go beat Tennessee 7 days later, there's nothing that speaks to the culture more than that. I mean, Really, truly. It's mind-blowing when you think about it. It's crazy when you think about it. There's nothing that speaks to the culture more than that. Being able to take a team that was down and out, broken, they had every reason to fold it up. 2 games left, heavy underdogs, 6-6, here we come. And I fully believe Shane Beamer, the culture he's built, you got to give full credit, man. So when you look at a season like this, hey, the computers might say 5.5 wins. Vegas might say 6.5. The FPI says this. Kelly Ford says that. But you are making a mistake if you don't factor in Shane Beamer's culture as being good for a win or two in every single season that he's the head coach there. Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break on the other side. We'll keep the convo rolling. I want to continue to hear from you, your questions, comments, calls, and more. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie, ho. Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Wednesday, July the 26th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in here on this hump day. Really excited to be chatting with you all. The conversation is fantastic as always. The phone lines are open, of course, 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. Let's see. Chase Floyd says, want to be a slapdick like me? Join the BCC today. Guys, definitely join the Big Cock Club, man. We have a great time in the Discord, chatting, conversating. And this, I tell you this, you are going to want to be in the Big Cock Club Discord this upcoming football season because I am going to be more active than I have ever been. Admittedly, last season, really the last 2 seasons, right? Because the BCC actually started July of 2021. But admittedly, the last 2 seasons, I was so busy with the tailgates, with selling merch, with being in the stadium. I really wasn't on the Discord at all. You can ask those in the Discord currently. They'd be watching games in there, and I wasn't anywhere to be found. That will not be the case this season. I am going to practically live in that Discord. So it's going to be a good time, man. I will tell you this, too. I'm probably not going to tweet as much in game. I'm going to save my comments, my thoughts for in the Discord, right? So you want to hang out with us, hang out with yours truly. We're going to be doing hangouts, watching these football games in which we can watch the game and conversate with each other. Highly suggest, and that'll be for every single game, not just South Carolina, a lot of SEC, a lot of college football. Y'all jump in, man. It's going to be a really, really good time. I can't wait. I genuinely, I'm going to be diving into the BCC this football season, unlike I ever have before. Let's get back into the question. Speaking of the BCC, Dalton says, which road game other than Georgia do you see as the most difficult on the schedule? For me, it's either A&M or Tennessee. What do you think has to happen for us to be able to be more consistently win on the road under Beamer? Well, Dalton, I say this. I think first off, it's hard. It's just hard to win on the road, Dalton. I mean, only I think truly the elites, you're not going to find a team, at least, maybe you can prove me wrong. Are there any teams out there that are like average football teams, 6-6, 7-5, 8-4, and they're better on the road than they are at home? I mean, we all know, right? We talk about how tough it is to play at Willie B and the atmosphere. And there's a lot of great atmospheres just like that in the SEC. So number one, Dalton, I mean, it's you want to be better on the road for sure. But, man, it's just hard to win on the road. It's just hard. It's hard to win on the road. Speaking of your question, though, toughest road game outside of Georgia, I would say I'm going to go Tennessee. I'm going to go Tennessee just because of you have to factor in, you can't go on stadium size alone or anything like that. But when you factor in what happened last year, the revenge factor, their fans are going to be, it's going to be a ruthless atmosphere, really, truly. Kyle Field will be very, very tough. It'll be very, very tough out of just the fact that it's 110,000 people damn near. So I'd go Knoxville, though. I also think Tennessee could be a better team than Texas A&M. I think A&M is going to be much improved. I think they both go 9-3, but yeah. So I have Tennessee as that tougher road game. He also mentions Dabble Loggins and George. His name is Dabble Loggins George. Dalton says in the Discord, do you think that some of the culture issues inside the A&M locker room will carry over into the season? Because I think that was one of the reasons why we were able to ambush them and take that game against them that nobody expected us to win. Well, they're trying to fix that, Dalton, for sure. I mean, are there going to be players smoking weed in the locker room beforehand? I have no idea. Let's get back to the YouTube chat, by the way, because I see some people that think they're invisible. You are not invisible. My guy, Spur Your Enthusiasm. What's up, man? Bryce G, what's going on? Spur Your Enthusiasm's in the house, man. I appreciate you. Appreciate you jumping in. He also said merch coming soon. Y'all won't want to miss out. Says he's already got player endorsement on the merch. Jerron Willis, Kilgore, Boogie Huntley, all rocking the merch in Sporting. I love to hear that, man. Bryce, chase your dreams, man. Do your thing. I love to hear that. Great stuff. Congratulations on that. Michael Lynn says it's the year of the true freshman. Could be. I mean, that South Carolina is going to be relying on a lot of youngsters, right? A lot of youngsters. Shane Beamer pointed out at SEC Media Days. They absolutely are. I think for this season to really pop and get to that 8-win or, God forbid, 9-win mark, yeah, I mean, a lot of freshmen are going to play and become big-time contributors for sure. Let's see by the way, guys, if I don't get to your questions, it's not because I'm like, you're invisible or I'm ignoring you. There's just tons of questions. I mean, if you really want to get your point across, call in. Those are the people that we get to first for obvious reasons. Britton Bellamy says, I went to the Florida game last year, watched Florida run the ball for 374 yards in person. Painful. Yeah, it was. Whew. Brendan M. of the Big Cock Club Discord was also there with the band, and he can attest to it also in person.
Dalton.
Let's jump to the phone lines. Dalton, what's going on, my friend? How are you?
How's it going? I'm just hanging out in South Dakota still.
Nice.
Enjoying the vacation, I guess. I've been here since Friday on a family visit. We're leaving out next Wednesday. It'll take us 3 days to get back home. So,
Dalton, is South Dakota, forgive me for not knowing the map. I'm pretty sure it is, but it's near Montana, right?
Iowa. Right
Iowa. Okay. I was just asking because I'm going to Montana late August, which will be a first for me. I'm excited.
Yes, it's not quite that far out on the west, but
okay.
It's close. I mean, but every state out here is so huge. Like to get from one side of the state to the other probably take about a day.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you are glad you're enjoying it, my guy. Glad you're enjoying the vacation. What's going on?
I just wanted to call in and give my input on what I was kind of pushing back on. And I think I got my point across is kind of, you talk about the line of scrimmage. That seems to be the main issue that everybody looks at with this team. But, I think Shane Beamer has sort of built a culture to where if those veteran guys don't produce, we have guys that can come in that are young and produce right away. So I would say this year more than any other year under Shane Beamer's tenure, the line of scrimmage I see as starting to improve. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think, is it more likely that we'll improve than not this year on the offensive line and the defensive line, or do you think it's kind of we're going to rank about the same?
The offensive line, I'm concerned. The defensive line, I'm a little bit more optimistic. Like if I had to pick one or the other, I'm more optimistic about the defensive line than the offensive line. With the offensive line, I'll say this, Dalton, because to your point, you added Trovon Bowe, you added Big Tree Bobolade, you added Marquis Anderson. I mean, you're adding, and Marquis Anderson's a guy who's a true freshman. He's probably going to have to play. I mean, bottom line. You are recruiting in a manner in which in 3 or 4 years, Carolina should, based off how they're recruiting, and they continue to do so, you should have at minimum, top half of the conference offensive line, if not a top 3 or 4 in the conference. And there's a lot of good ones. So, I mean, if you're the fifth best offensive line, you're still pretty damn good because there's some really good O-lines in this conference. But the way they're recruiting, that unit is absolutely going to improve. And to be fair, last year, right, we came out of week 1 just, hey, the O-line stinks. They're no good. This is terrible. And they slowly but surely got better as the season progressed. And that was when Alani Teasley took over for Greg Atkins. So I know Atkins is still on staff, but Lonnie Teasley's your O-line coach. So maybe the Lonnie Teasley effect. And I've even said this, Dalton. As much as we're talking about the O-line and how, quote unquote, bad they're going to be, I will not be surprised if in week 4, 5, 6, whatever, we're talking about the O-line's better than we expected because we're setting the bar so low for them. I think there's real question marks. You returned 50 less starts than you had last year, and the O-line wasn't great. You lose Jalen Nichols in the spring game, probably for the entire year. Like, there are real questions. And so to answer your question, and here's the big thing too, Dalton, I'll say before I get to that point, that I said last year that the O-line being bad wasn't an excuse to be bad offensively. You know, Marcus Satterfield, what you should have been able to do, I know this is easier said than done. You got to find a way to scheme around it. You know, O-line at minimum just isn't the strength of your football team. Okay, how can we scheme around that? How can we make life easier on our offensive line? Going into this season, it's kind of the same thing. Maybe Dowell Loggins can do a better job scheming around it, putting them in positions to where they can have success. But to get to your point, do I think the O-line will improve as the season goes along? Yes, I do. Do I think the O-line is going to have some performances like week one, Dalton? I think the O-line is going to look a lot better than maybe they even are in week one, because I don't think North Carolina has got the bodies to push us around and expose us up front. I just don't see that. Now, I think there's going to be games, for example, Georgia, that it's going to be very glaringly obvious that we got a ways to go, and there's a reason we're recruiting the way we are. But do I see them progressing and getting better as the season goes? Sure. But I still think it's probably one of those things, Dalton, that even if they make improvement, I think more than likely this is an offensive front it's going to be outside of the top 100 in rushing offense. And, you know, we'll get to the offensive line and our position unit stuff and what'll deem us. But, you know, I think it's going to be kind of up and down, kind of like the rest of this football team yet again. So there's potential there, but unfortunately, I think some of the best talent on that O-line is just really young. And you know as well as I do, starting freshman on the offensive front in the SEC is not exactly a recipe for great success.
And then my last comment or question is, if the O-line plays up to their potential and the D-line plays up to their potential, what do you think our record is at the end of the season? But I'll let you answer that off air. And, you know, I appreciate you having me on.
Dalton, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for the call. And this is a fascinating combo, and I'm glad Dalton asked it. If the line of scrimmage for South Carolina, both of them, if the line of scrimmage exceeds expectations, I mean, guys, this is a team that can win 9 games. No doubt in my mind. I think saying 10 is a little over aggressive. This team can absolutely go 9-3. If the line of scrimmage from game one is better than we expect on both sides. I mean, guys, in my opinion, if South Carolina had a rushing offense and rushing defense that ranked in the top half of the league, this would be a 9 or 10 win football team. I really believe that, because you have the skill position guys. You do. You know, I mean, there's inconsistencies with Rattler for sure. You can upgrade at wide receiver. I mean, you can upgrade at many positions, but like, to me, this is a 9 or 10 win football team. If you had a top half of the league rush offense, rush defense. And I think Shane Beamer identifies that, and that's why they're recruiting how they are right now.
From
Peyton.
Peyton, what's up, man? How are you?
Good. How about yourself, Chris?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I appreciate you asking. What's going on?
Not much. Just calling in to piggyback off of the topic. If our offensive line is up to par, I think the upside of this season is very, very is a lot higher than what we're expecting as of right now. And I said last week about Trey Knox serving as an edge protector, kind of a role. Now I realize that Trey Knox is going to be primarily a big playmaker for us, and we're not going to ask him to do a whole lot of blocking. But I'll say this: if you can set an edge, if you can set the edge, you can run the football. And I played with a lot of really good tight ends that help set the edge, and they can create space for you. And we've got guys, Juju McDowell, for instance. They're scat backs, man. They can hit holes, and they're very good going lateral. So if Trey Knox and some of these other tight ends, if they can help set an edge, you can run the football. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Listen, you make great points on it. I think Trey Knox, his blocking ability, Joshua Simon as well, that'll be big on the edge, no doubt. I mean, listen, South Carolina's got some guys that I think are capable, because at times they've played good football. And Heck, I've talked to some folks then that may be thinking it's no disrespect to these guys, but, you lose Eric Douglas, Jovan Gwynn, and Dylan Wanham. There's people out there that believe, and I'm talking in the building, that believe that the next in line is actually better than those guys were last year. So, I mean, maybe so. Listen, the offensive line could be the biggest surprise of the season. It really could. And if it is, I mean, dude, I like my chances with Spencer Rattler with a clean pocket. I mean, give me that all day long.
Yeah.
I like my chances with Spencer Rattler operating with a running game that's averaging 4 or 5 yards per carry. I like my chances. I like my chances a lot. So if the offensive line can overachieve and they can figure some things out and they can get their best starting five quickly and, some guys can emerge and come into their own, again, this team can win 9 games. There's no doubt in my mind. But it's much easier said than done. And you're depending on guys that are either true freshmen or guys that played at schools like Charlotte, Mercer, Yale, and Western Illinois. If this coaching staff identified them as good enough to play, then I'm going to believe them they're good enough. But, make no mistake, there's a transition. It's not the same. It's not. There's a reason. Listen, there's a reason why when Carolina takes on Furman in week 2 or takes on when they took on Charlotte last year, there's a reason why you expect Carolina to whip their ass because they don't have the guys that we have. So now we're taking one of those guys and putting them on our roster. So, I know there's some diamonds in the rough. Look at Juice Wells. He played for James Madison. There's diamonds in the rough, but I'm just saying that, I got to see it. I need to see it. I need to see it. But the potential is there, and I love what they're doing in recruiting, man. I mean, listen, we all worry about, on a side note, Peyton, we all worry about how many games we're going to win this year, whatever. And, we need to get to 8. We got to get to 9. If we get to 7, then this. If we do 6, then this. The key is just get to enough wins to keep up momentum in recruiting because that's what matters. If the recruiting starts going south, then you should worry. But that's why I said it when Shane Beamer was hired. And listen, you want to maximize the potential every season. I think that's what Gamecock fans, I think that's what we struggle with is feeling like, man, we left a couple out there. Like we just didn't get out of this season what we really could have. I said this when he was hired, though. The first 5 years, just make bowl games. Just win 7 to 8 games a year and build the hell out of that program in recruiting. That's it. That's it. That's all I need you to do. You're not winning the SEC this year. So the next best thing you can do, win as many games as you can and recruit your ass off and win enough to start luring guys like Nicholas Harbor, like Dylan Stewart, like Daniel Hill, like Jonathan Paylor, like these other guys, right? To lure them to Columbia to where you can get to a point where you can say, we're a couple pieces away. You're the missing piece. You can be part of our SEC championship roster. That's where you want to be. So it is funny. We spend so much time worrying about predictions and scores and it's important to win. Win just enough, though, to be a lead in recruiting because help's on the way on the offensive front. Help's on the way on the defensive front. That's the problem, though. I just don't know that it's there this year. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, man, if you get back to your point, if you get above average offensive line play, this team's going to win a lot of games.
Yeah. And so 2 things to say to that. We go back and forth and we say, we're really going to find out just how good this offensive line is against Georgia. And if you really expect, I mean, it's kind of a given that there's not going to be that many offensive lines in the country, for that matter, that are going to look good against Georgia. I mean, there's maybe Bama, maybe a LSU, and maybe some other sleeper team could actually have a decent showing up front against Georgia. But I just think it's when you're talking about a team like that, where that is now the standard of college football, yes, of course, we're definitely a ways away from that. But like you said, there's help on the way. We're recruiting 4- and 5-star guys left and right. And if we keep winning that battle, and I think we'll be able to compete in a short number of years. The second thing is to keep stealing these guys, to keep getting these 4- and 5-star guys, taking advantage of opportunities like game day, like these big primetime national games, to where
a lot of people are going to have their eyes on it. A lot of these recruits are going to be watching games like that. So if we can take advantage of those opportunities where we have the national spotlight, I think that it's a better advertisement. It's a better selling point for, hey, if you want to come to South Carolina, you're going to play on game day, you're going to be in primetime spots, and you're going to have the opportunity to beat these nationally ranked teams and get a chance to show yourself. So I think, like I said yesterday, I think it's really important for us to come out and set a tone against UNC week 1 with a nationally televised game and it being prime time, and a lot of eyes are going to be on it. So I think we need to take advantage of those opportunities.
I agree 110%, Peyton. We all agree week 1, game day, a fantastic opportunity for Shane Beamer and company. Peyton, I'm going to let you go, man. I'm going to get to a lot of things you said off air. I appreciate you calling in, though. It's always a pleasure to chat with you, my friend.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, appreciate you, man. Take care. So I want to get to things Peyton said. And here's the thing, and I'll start it off with this. You know what's great about being objective and being real and being honest is y'all know that when I say something like I'm about to say, I'm not bullshitting you. Like, I'm not just being sunshine and rainbows. I'm not just telling you what you want to hear. I'm telling you what I actually believe. There is nothing that Shane Beamer is not doing to put South Carolina in the best possible position to do things they've never done. He's doing all the right things, from promotion of his program, the way he interacts on social media, the way he interacts with the media, winning games on the field, overachieving in the first 2 years, beating the arch rival, recruiting, which is so important, winning in the transfer portal. Like, there's nothing that Shane Beamer isn't doing. Like if Shane Beamer's tenure, let's say it ends 5, 10, 15 years, and South Carolina doesn't win the SEC. They don't make a college ball playoff. They don't win a national title. I don't know, whatever it is. It's not going to be because of lack of effort. It's not going to be because of lack of try. It's not going to be because Shane Beamer didn't exhaust every single option possible to make it happen. You go from on field to getting college game day to the exposure of the program. Like, I would pose that question to doubters. What is Shane Beamer not doing? What are they not doing? I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to execution, right? Execution and recruiting, getting the right guys, evaluating the right talent. But I mean, in my opinion, guys, you should be really happy and optimistic as a Gamecock fan, because Shane Beamer is doing everything right now. Now, does that mean it's going to be all sunshine and rainbows and that there aren't going to be some bumps in the road and some ups and some downs? That's not what that means, because this is sports. And guess what? Those other 13 teams in the SEC, they're trying to win too. That's what I think people sometimes forget that. These other teams are also trying to win. But Shane Beamer is a guy in that Gamecocks football program, and you talk about the culture and everything, he's a guy, you look at him, you look at his program, they're doing it the right way. They're doing everything the right way. Does it pay off? We shall see. So, I really believe that. Like I said, I truly, genuinely believe that Shane Beamer is setting up South Carolina for the best success they've ever had. Bruin Nation, to your point, that's why this OC hire is huge, one way or another. It has to work. Bruin Nation, it has to work. It has to work. There's not a more important hire. And I know, listen, Bobby Petrino was the most important assistant coaching hire in the country. That really, truly, like from the national perspective. But this hiring of Dowell Loggins, this is the most important hire that Shane Beamer will make. People don't like to talk about it. They get uncomfortable. It's the truth. It's reality. Because guess what? None of us like hearing comparisons between Will Muschamp and Shane Beamer. And they're absurd. They're ridiculous. They're ludicrous. It's why you have to have context. But Will Muschamp, he was a defensive coach. But when he got to Florida, guys, the book wasn't written on, oh, this is a guy that has crappy OCs. He can't identify good offensive football. He's a nightmare for offenses, right? Wherever he goes, the offense stinks. Well, That reputation wasn't born overnight. That reputation wasn't anointed to him before he ever was a head coach. It was a reputation he built over time because he went through Charlie Weiss, Kurt Roper, Brian McClendon, Mike Bobo. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. The last thing you want if you're Shane Beamer is to build a similar reputation where, listen, Marcus Satterfield's a swing and a miss. Fine. You got the job here. He wanted to keep Bobo. Bobo leaves in the middle of the night. You had to settle for your buddy Sat. Didn't work out. So be it. But you better get the second guy right. You better get the second guy right. Because you had time to sift through the candidates, sift through the options, and get your guy. This is your guy. It has to work. It goes without saying, but it has to work. It has to work. That's not me being negative about it. That's just keeping it a buck. It's got to work. Dowell Loggins has to be the answer offensively. Because it's like we said last year, guys, and it's easier to discuss this when you're in the heat of it, but I really believe this. I don't know if just winning 7 or 8 is good enough. Because Carolina was 6-4 last year, going in the final 2 games. I know it was coming off that Florida game. If you want to take it a step further and go back, Carolina was 6-3 going into their last 3 games. 6-3. I mean, you think about it, guys. Think about it. The Gamecocks had overachieved greatly to that point. But the mood around that 6-3, was not, we're great, this is awesome. There was still a lot of dissatisfaction with that 6-3. There were mixed feelings with that 6-3. There was some restlessness with that 6-3. Why is that? Well, because South Carolina was winning games. It was about how they were winning the games. Defense and special teams. Offense stunk. People want to see good offense. Folks in Columbia are starving for good offense. Dowell Loggins has got to be that answer. Bottom line. He's just got to be that answer. And I think he can be. I think he absolutely can be. I think he can be. Let's jump to the phone lines here.
Call from
Brendan M.
to accept, press 1. To send a voicemail,
I know
2.
this isn't Brendan, but I'm going to entertain this. Brendan M., what's up, man?
Hey, what's up, Chris? Chase, I just had to throw in a straw. I'll throw in there since Brendan's never called in. What's up, man?
What's going on? Okay, I thought there was some foolishness going on. I thought there was some foolishness. It is not Brendan M. Okay.
No, it's Chase, Queen Slayer or Strong Slayer.
Right.
I was living up to the name. I just thought I'd be safe.
Okay.
But,
fair enough.
hey, man, I ain't talked to you in a little bit. I was just going to say, it's close to ball season when everybody's anxiety's up through the roof fighting over 10-2 and 7-5. Our O-line was good. Our O-line sucks. It's fun, man. And I just want to say, I love the show, obviously. I wouldn't be mobbing for you if I didn't appreciate what you're doing. And I'm ready to get it going. And I haven't really said, I've always, the 2 years or so we've been doing this thing on the Big Cock Club. I've called in and let you know, my views on the team. And I've always been more realistic. When the game day rolls around, I hope we go 12-0 every year. I'm rooting from the seat, the couch, or from the bleachers. I'm all for it. But this year, I'm like you. I think we're going. In my mind, I think it's going 7-5. But does that mean our offensive defensive line don't overachieve like y'all think so? Sure, they can. And then like you said, I believe we could have a 9-win season or so. There's just so many gifts for right now at this point of the season for me to just say that with confidence and with my chest. Yeah, we're going 9-3, 10-2.
I'm just realistic. We ain't never done it. We've got to Atlanta once, but that don't mean I don't want us to go every year. And I just, man, it's that time of year where everybody's crunching numbers, looking at rankings, looking at recruiting. I love it. It's that time of year, man. I just appreciate what you're doing, and appreciate everybody calling in. The Discord, man, Big Cock Club, you know how much fun we have in that after the show and stuff every day. So, yeah, man, I just wanted to call in and tell you, man, I love how the show's grown. Congratulations. I don't know if I've actually got to talk to you since you've been back from SEC Media Day. I don't think I have. I don't think we've been in the call. But congratulations on that. Formally, man, that's big. It was great to see you on the TV and listen to the content, my friend. Well, that's all I got. I just wanted to say that little bit in for my friend, and let's keep this thing going. Let's get it going. Like Brooklyn says, spot the ball. Let's go.
Chase, I appreciate you, man, for the kind words. Thank you so much. That was very, very choppy. I heard enough of it to understand what he was saying. And, Chase mentioned the content and everything. And, I'll say this, guys, because something that came to mind while he was talking. Again, I want to say thank you to Chase for the love, the support. It was very cool being on TV for sure. But I tell you this, guys, again, he brought up again the content and just being real about things and being genuine. Guys, I'll put it to you this way. I think it would be an insult if I were to blow smoke up your rear ends and be overly positive and optimistic in fear of that you, as a consumer of this content and a member of the audience of this show, in fear of the fact that I felt like, well, they can't handle the banter. They can't handle an opinion. They can't handle a critical thought. I think it's a greater insult for you to go on air and speak only on things in a manner to your audience that aren't going to ruffle any feathers and aren't going to make them feel bad because you don't feel as if they're capable of engaging in banter and critical conversation. And I am so grateful and happy to say with our audience, guys, I feel the people that tune into TSUS are some of the smartest and most critical thinking Gamecock fans in this fan base. I know based off the conversations we have, and I take it very personally when people come after folks who support TSUS, support the business, support the content, everything else, because the people in this fan base that support TSUS are very smart people. They're critical thinkers. They have their own opinions. They're able to think independently. They don't have to go with the masses. The masses don't sway their thought. They're able to sit down. Whether that opinion you agree or disagree, I respect all opinions. If you're able to have an opinion, support it with some context, and say it with your damn chest, I support the hell out of it, and I appreciate it. And it's why this works, because I don't believe people want smoke blowing up their ass. They want you to keep it real with them and even be challenged sometimes on their school of thinking. I think that's honestly why being critical and having an opinion and being willing to stand behind that, that's why that wins over being a sunshine pumper only positive, because what you're telling me is you don't believe I can handle the truth. That's what you're telling me by not telling it to me. And while I may not like what you have to say, I may not like the truth, I'd rather that be the case than you bullshit me, because you don't respect me if you bullshit me. You're insulting my intelligence if you bullshit me. And I will never bullshit you all. Guys, we'll jump into one final break. On the other side, I got plenty of joy, Bruin Nation. Get out of here. We're going to jump into one final break, guys. On the other side, we'll close it out. Take your questions, comments, calls, and more. You're tuned into the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie, ho. Marshall Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back. Final 5 minutes or so here in the Daily Crow on this Wednesday, July 26th, taking your questions, comments, calls. Interesting piece from my guy, Brad Crawford of 24/7 Sports. He wrote an article on every SEC team's biggest swing game of the 2023 football season. And this sounds very familiar. His most important swing game for South Carolina, October the 14th against the Florida Gators, coming off the bye week. He has this to say. Depending on whom you ask, you'll get a wide variety of answers here. But most South Carolina fans will tell you the home bout with Florida coming off an open week in October is an absolute must-win game this season. The Gamecocks played flat in last year's blowout loss to the Gators, and considering how difficult the first month of the season will be for Shane Beamer's team, this one's favorable at Williams-Brice Stadium against an opponent only projected at 5.5 victories. A win here likely puts South Carolina at 4-2 on its way to a pivotal showdown with Missouri the following weekend. I agree with Brad 110%. That Florida game is a must-win this season. Let's jump to the phone lines.
Call from
Rebecca.
Rebecca, what's going on? How are you?
Good. Hey, are you coming to Columbia anytime soon?
I do not know, Rebecca. I do not know. Oh, here we go. I do not know. I honestly do not know. I'll have to keep you in. I'll have to stay in touch and let you know. I'm. It's not on my calendar right now. We'll just say that.
Well, we changed our plans. Me and Will's going to Columbia.
You said change the plans. You said.
Yeah, we're going to Columbia on August the 4th.
Oh, okay. What for specifically? Any reason? Any special occasion?
Well, you didn't hear the news, did you?
What's the news?
Me and Will proposed to me.
What? You're getting hitched.
Yeah.
You're getting hitched.
Yeah, but we're not going to do it like overnight. We're just going to take day by day, and we're waiting a couple of years down the road. So
Congratulations, Rebecca. Congratulations. How, Rebecca, remind me, how long have y'all been dating?
We've been dating since, I think, June 11th.
Rebecca, congratulations. When you know, you know.
All right. So me and him's going to be engaged for a good long time. So
I love that. When you know, you know. You two lovebirds. You.
Right.
I love that. Love that, Rebecca.
because I need to come get on the show with y'all when I come down there.
We'll get the whole gang together, Rebecca.
Yeah, that'd be awesome if I could I'll be coming on August the 4th, and then I'm staying till that Sunday. So.
Wow. And this is not to bring up, not to bring up any old news, but is this husband number 3? Am I keeping count correctly or no?
This will be my 3rd marriage.
Hey, 3rd time is a charm, Rebecca. That's why I wanted to ask. 3rd time is a charm.
Right. But I just thought I'd tell you, and because I know I'm coming to Westminster, but I know I'm going to be passing through. But I thought I'd tell you and get a hold of you and see if you want to meet up somewhere.
Yeah, I'll keep you in the loop, Rebecca. We'll figure this thing out. So what are y'all doing in Columbia for like the wedding stuff?
We're not getting married right away.
Okay,
though.
you're just going to Columbia to go. Okay.
I'm going on vacation, getting the hell out of Tennessee.
Getting the hell out of Tennessee. I hear you.
And last night, I want to tell you something too. Pastor's wife got on to me.
About what?
Last night. Because I was going on saying that I didn't say get the hell out of Tennessee now. I said I'd be glad to leave the state of Tennessee for a few days. He took it like I was going to run away from Tennessee for good. And I told her no. Yeah.
Your life is a movie, Rebecca. That's a lot of stuff going on.
She told me, said, you have to be careful what you post. I do not want to have that on my Facebook. It says you post stuff like that. You always throw off on Tennessee and other things, but not trying to be mean. But if you keep it up, I will not follow. That's what she told me. I said, I'm glad I'm getting out for a few days. I'm not running away, I promise. And then she said, I will not follow, Rebecca. And I said, you should know by now I go on about Tennessee. Vols were fun, too. But you were not doing that in fun. And I said, I know, I'm sorry. I said, I told her that I wanted to be close friends. And I told her that, I said, I might go see some family. I don't know yet. But I'm happy about going, and I'll be posting pictures, too. And I understand where you're coming from. I don't know why she took it like that yesterday.
I don't know. I have no idea. Well, Rebecca, I hope y'all have safe travels, and I'm happy for you. Sincerely, I'm happy for you.
Yeah. Well, it's 3:02. I reckon I'll get off of here and let you end the show.
Yeah, we got to take these dogs out. They're itching to go on their WALK. So.
Right.
Rebecca, I appreciate you, though.
Right.
Yeah, always a pleasure to chat with you.
All right.
Rebecca, be good. What a way to end the show. Brewer Nation says you got to go another 10 minutes to give Dale time to respond. We got a interview or a convo coming up at 4. Brewer Nation. I got to take the dogs out and get the podcast edited and uploaded and eat some food. So unfortunately, I got things to do. Real quick, I want to shout out my guy Bryce G. Spur your enthusiasm, Bryce. I see you in here commenting about my guy. Apologize, I couldn't get to more of your comments. Bryce and I have really fun back and forth banter. Bryce is a huge diehard Gamecock fan, doing great things on social media, on Instagram. Follow Spur Your Enthusiasm. And Bryce, I've always appreciated your love over the years, man. I appreciate that sincerely. Guys, we're going to go ahead and get out of here again. Thank you all so much. Appreciate you all tuning in. Stay tuned to all the content bleeding out of the eyeballs. These simulations will pick up Sunday. We'll go Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. We've got Mississippi State, Tennessee, and Florida. Going to be a lot of fun. But in the meantime, again, guys, thank you all so much. Appreciate you all tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.